God tried reaching you 4 times, and each time you almost walked away from the very moment that was sent to wake you up. The first time, you felt a quiet pull, but you called it coincidence. The second time, conviction rose in your chest, but you buried it under noise. The third time, a door closed, a dream returned, a sentence hit too deeply, but you told yourself you were overthinking. The fourth time, you knew something was speaking, but exhaustion whispered, "Not today." But this time is different. This is the 5th time, and grace has a way of knocking again when shame says you missed your chance. God is not here to condemn you for the times you did not listen. He is here to show you the pattern, because once you see the pattern, you cannot go back to calling it random. Something has been fighting for your attention because something sacred is attached to your obedience. And before you walk away again, before distraction steals another divine interruption, hear this clearly. God is saying, "Not this time. You are going to stay. You are going to hear. And you are going to understand why He kept coming back. Because this is not only about a message finding you. This is about a pattern in your life being exposed. There is a reason you almost left. There is a reason something in you resisted. There is a reason your mind suddenly became restless the moment your spirit started paying attention. Sometimes the part of you that needs healing will reach for distraction the second truth gets too close. Not because you are weak, but because pain has trained you to leave before you can be disappointed again. You have done it in relationships. You have done it in prayer. You have done it with opportunities. You have done it with signs. You have done it with your own calling. Something begins to feel too real, too sacred, too close, too personal. And before it can ask anything of you, you move away from it. You tell yourself it is not the right time. You tell yourself you are too tired. You tell yourself you will come back later. You tell yourself it probably was not that deep. But chosen one, I need you to hear this gently. Sometimes later is the language fear uses when it does not want you to obey now. And I am not saying that to pressure you. I am saying it because there are moments in your life where God does not shout. He simply interrupts the pattern. He interrupts the scrolling. He interrupts the numbness. He interrupts the overthinking. He interrupts the emotional running. He interrupts the quiet agreement you made with survival. And when He interrupts, He is not trying to embarrass you. He is trying to recover you. There is a part of you God has been reaching for. Not the version of you that performs. Not the version of you that smiles while carrying invisible weight. Not the version of you that gives everyone advice while silently drowning inside. Not the version of you that keeps saying, "I am fine," while your spirit is barely breathing. God has been reaching for the real you, the one underneath the coping, the one underneath the disappointment, the one underneath the religious language, the spiritual language, the brave face, the constant motion, the late-night thoughts, the quiet tears, the unfinished prayers, the dreams you stopped mentioning because you were tired of sounding hopeful. That is the you He is reaching for. And this is why you could not fully leave. Something in you recognized the sound of the knock. Maybe you did not understand it yet. Maybe you could not explain it. Maybe all you felt was a strange stillness, a slight heaviness, a sudden pause, a sentence inside you that said, "Stay for a moment." That was not nothing. That was not random. That was not your imagination simply wandering. That was recognition. And recognition is different from curiosity. Curiosity says, "Let me see what this is." Recognition says, "I have felt this before." Recognition says, "This is touching something I have been avoiding." Recognition says, "This sounds like the voice that has been following me through dreams, delays, closed doors, uncomfortable conversations, and moments where I suddenly felt the truth but did not want to admit it." So before we go any deeper, I want you to understand what you are going to receive if you stay with this message until the end. You are going to understand the 4 ways God has already tried to reach you. You are going to see why you kept almost missing Him, even when the signs were not random. You are going to learn how silence, discomfort, delay, and exhaustion may have been speaking to you in ways you did not recognize. You are going to receive a practical way to test whether something is truly calling you higher or only pulling you into fear. And by the end, you will know what the fifth knock is asking from you now. Not in a dramatic way, not in a fearful way, but in a way that brings clarity to the place in you that has been tired of guessing. So stay present, not for me, not out of pressure. Stay because your spirit has been asking for language, and this may be the moment the language finally arrives. Now listen carefully. The first time God tried to reach you, He did not use thunder, He used silence. And that is why you almost missed it. Because most people think God is absent when life gets quiet. They think if nothing is moving, nothing is happening. They think if no door is opening, no answer is coming. They think if they cannot feel excitement, then heaven must have gone silent. But sometimes, silence is not the absence of God. Sometimes silence is the first mercy. Sometimes silence is God removing every competing sound so the truth can finally become clear. You wanted a sign that would shake the room, but God gave you a quiet hour where nothing could distract you. You wanted a voice that would explain everything, but God allowed the noise around you to fade until you could finally hear the ache underneath your own thoughts. You wanted movement. God gave you stillness. You wanted confirmation. God gave you space. You wanted a loud answer. God gave you silence. Because silence was the only place where your real condition could rise to the surface. But you did what many chosen ones do. You filled the silence before it could speak. You reached for noise. You reached for another conversation. You reached for another distraction. You reached for another task. You reached for another reason to stay busy. You reached for anything that could keep you from sitting with the truth that was trying to meet you there. And again, this is not condemnation. This is compassion. Because silence is not easy when your soul has been crowded for too long. Silence can feel threatening when you have spent years surviving through motion. Silence can feel empty when you have been abandoned before. Silence can feel like punishment when you are used to earning love through usefulness. Silence can feel like danger when peace is unfamiliar. So when God gave you silence, your nervous system did not call it sacred. It called it uncomfortable. Your mind did not call it invitation. It called it boredom. Your fear did not call it a doorway. It called it nothing. But it was not nothing. That was the first knock. Think about the moments when life became strangely quiet. Not peaceful at first, just quiet. The people who normally demanded your attention suddenly stepped back. The noise you usually leaned on did not satisfy you anymore. The conversations that once entertained you started feeling shallow. The places you used to run to no longer gave you the same relief. Even the things you used to use to numb yourself stopped working the way they used to. And maybe you thought, what is wrong with me? Why do I feel disconnected? Why does everything feel dull? Why can I not enjoy what I used to enjoy? Why do I feel like something is missing, even when nothing obvious has changed? Chosen one. What if nothing was wrong with you? What if something was being cleared around you? What if God was not taking joy from your life, but removing false comfort from your system? What if the silence was not emptiness, but preparation? Because before God gives some people direction, He first removes the noise that would cause them to mishear it. Before He sends the next instruction, He quiets the voices that would argue with it. Before He opens the next door, He lets you feel the exhaustion of every hallway you were never meant to keep walking. That is why the silence felt so strange. It was not only quiet around you, it was revealing what was loud inside you. The fear was loud. The regret was loud. The longing was loud. The question you kept avoiding was loud. The grief you never fully named was loud. The desire for a different life was loud. The anger you kept spiritualizing was loud. The disappointment you kept calling patience was loud. The loneliness you kept covering with strength was loud. Silence did not create those things. Silence revealed them, and that is why you almost walked away from it. Because when silence becomes honest, it stops being comfortable. It starts asking questions. Why are you still carrying what God never assigned to you? Why do you keep calling exhaustion loyalty? Why do you keep calling fear wisdom? Why do you keep calling delay failure? Why do you keep asking for a sign after ignoring the quiet conviction you already received? Those are not easy questions, but they are holy questions. And the first knock was not meant to shame you. It was meant to bring you back to the place where you could finally hear them. This is why so many chosen ones feel a strange pull towards solitude before their life changes. Not isolation that destroys them, not loneliness that convinces them they are forgotten, but a sacred separation where God begins removing every borrowed voice from their inner world. Because you cannot answer your calling while 10 different voices are defining your worth. You cannot recognize divine instruction while fear is narrating every possibility. You cannot walk into a new season while still needing approval from the season God is trying to close. So he quiets things. He lets certain conversation fade. He lets certain relationships lose their grip. He lets certain pleasures stop working. He lets certain distractions feel strangely empty. He lets the noise lose its flavor. And at first, you think you are losing something. But what if you are being returned? Returned to your own spirit. Returned to your own discernment. Return to the part of you that can still recognize God without needing a crowd to confirm it. There is a reason the first knock came through silence. Because silence tests what noise has been hiding. When everything is loud, you can avoid yourself. When everyone needs you, you can avoid your own need. When life stays busy, you can avoid the deeper question. But when things get quiet, the truth starts sitting beside you. And the truth does not always accuse. Sometimes it simply waits. It waits until you are tired of pretending. It waits until you stop performing strength. It waits until your soul finally says, I cannot keep living disconnected from what I know God is asking of me. That moment is not weakness. That moment is the beginning of honesty. And honesty is often where God begins rebuilding a chosen one. You may have thought the silence was proof that God had nothing to say, but silence was the room he prepared so you could finally stop arguing with what he had already been saying. You may have thought the quiet season meant you were losing momentum, but silence was not slowing you down to punish you. It was slowing you down because you were about to carry something that required a deeper kind of attention. You may have thought the absence of noise meant nothing was happening. But seeds do not become visible while they are being buried. Foundations do not make noise while they are being laid. Healing does not always announce itself while it is entering the deepest wound. And God does some of his most serious work in places where nobody claps, nobody notices, nobody validates, and nobody interrupts. That is why the first knock was so easy to dismiss. It did not look impressive. It did not look urgent. It did not look dramatic. It simply felt like a quiet pressure inside your spirit, asking you to stop running. And maybe you did not stop. Maybe you avoided it. Maybe you filled the room with sound. Maybe you kept yourself busy until the feeling passed. Maybe you told yourself you were fine. Maybe you said you were just tired. Maybe you promised to pray later, think later, listen later, deal with it later. And grace saw all of that. Grace saw you avoid the silence. Grace saw you run from the stillness. Grace saw you almost hear, then distract yourself. And grace did not leave. That is what you need to understand. The first knock was missed, but the door was not abandoned. God did not say, they failed to hear me, so I am finished. He did not say, they avoided the quiet, so they are disqualified. He did not say, they filled the silence with noise, so I will never speak again. No, he kept coming, because the heart of God, but God's silence can mean, come closer. And the difference is found in what the silence produces. If silence produces shame that crushes you, that is not the voice of the Father. If silence produces fear that makes you panic, that is not the heart of God. But if silence produces awareness, humility, hunger, and a gentle ache to return, then something sacred is happening. Because God does not always break the silence by making noise. Sometimes He breaks the silence by making you aware that you are tired, aware that you are distracted, aware that you are grieving, aware that you are not as aligned as you keep pretending to be, aware that the old way of living cannot carry the weight of the next season. And awareness is mercy, because what you cannot see, you cannot surrender. What you cannot name, you cannot heal. What you keep denying, you keep repeating. So the first knock was God giving you awareness. Not all at once, not in a way that overwhelmed you, but in quiet pieces. A thought that kept returning, a heaviness you could not explain, a moment where you sat alone and suddenly felt the truth pressing gently against your chest. A strange feeling that something needed to change. A sense that you were not lost, but you were also not where you were meant to stay. That was the first knock, and I know part of you may be asking, why did I not recognize it? Why did I run from it? Why did I need so many attempts? Why did I keep moving when something in me knew I needed to listen? Chosen one. Because you were not just distracted, you were wounded. And wounded people do not always run from God because they hate truth. Sometimes they run because truth has touched places that have already hurt too much. You were not avoiding God because you had no faith. You were avoiding the feeling that would come if you realized He had been speaking all along. Because if God had been speaking, then you would have to admit that the delay mattered, the discomfort mattered, the closed doors mattered, the repeated signs mattered, the dreams mattered, the exhaustion mattered, the silence mattered, and admitting that can be heavy. It means your life is not as random as your fear tried to tell you. It means the moments you dismissed may have been part of a pattern. It means the things you called coincidence may have been mercy wearing ordinary clothes. And once you see that, you cannot unknow it. That is why this message may feel gentle and uncomfortable at the same time. Gentle, because it is covered in grace. Uncomfortable, because it is calling you out of avoidance. And there is a difference between being condemned and being called. Condemnation says, you are bad. Calling says, you are needed. Condemnation says, you missed it, so it is over. Calling says, you missed it, so I came again. Condemnation says, hide. Calling says, return. Condemnation says, God is tired of you. Calling says, God is still reaching. And if you receive nothing else from this first part, receive that. God is still reaching, even after the silence you avoided, even after the signs you questioned, even after the moments you dismissed, even after the times you almost listened, then ran back into noise. He is still reaching, and that means your story is not over. It means the missed knock did not cancel the next knock. It means grace has been more patient than your shame allowed you to believe. It means the Father understands the difference between rebellion and wounded avoidance. It means He knows how to call you in a way that reaches the part of you that is still tender, still afraid, still hoping, still listening beneath all the noise. There is a story in Scripture where a young boy named Samuel heard his name in the night. He did not understand at first. He thought the voice belonged to someone else. He rose again and again, confused by the call, not yet able to recognize the one who was speaking. And what moves me about that story is not only that God called Samuel, it is that God called again. The first time Samuel did not understand. God called again. The second time Samuel still did not understand. God called again. There is a mercy in repetition. There is a tenderness in the way God teaches someone to recognize His voice. He does not always abandon the person who misunderstands the first call. Sometimes He repeats the call until recognition is born. And maybe that is what has been happening in your life. Maybe the silence was the first time you heard your name, but did not know who was calling. Maybe the discomfort was the second time. Maybe the delay was the third. Maybe the exhaustion was the fourth. And maybe this moment is where your spirit finally begins to understand. It was God. Not every feeling, not every thought, not every random event, but the pattern, the repeated mercy, The way the same truth kept returning through different doors. The way you could not fully escape the sense that something was calling you higher. The way even your distractions could not completely silence the ache. That is the pattern. And this is where you begin to respond differently. Not with panic, not with dramatic promises, not with a performance of spirituality, but with attention. Sacred attention. Because attention is often the first form of obedience. Before the big decision, there is attention. Before the breakthrough, there is attention. Before the instruction, there is attention. Before the assignment, there is attention. Before Samuel could answer, he had to recognize that he was being called. So right now, without moving your body, without needing to write anything down, without needing to change where you are, I want you to do something internally. In your mind, picture the noise in your life as a crowded room. Every worry has a voice. Every fear has a voice. Every person who expects something from you has a voice. Every regret has a voice. Every unfinished decision has a voice. Now imagine, for just a moment, that the room becomes quiet, not empty, quiet. And in that quiet, one sentence remains. God, what have you been trying to show me that I keep covering with noise? Do not force an answer. Do not chase a vision. Do not pressure yourself to feel something dramatic. Just let that question sit inside you like a lamp in a dark room. God, what have you been trying to show me that I keep covering with noise? That question may not answer everything today, but it will begin to expose what distraction has been protecting. And sometimes, the first honest question is the first open door. This is the beginning of the sacred attention audit. Not a complicated practice, not a performance, not something to prove your spirituality. It is simply the decision to notice what you run to when silence arrives. When things get quiet, what do you reach for? When conviction rises, what do you use to bury it? When your spirit feels a pull, what thought talks you out of listening? When God creates space, what noise do you invite back in? That is where your pattern begins to reveal itself. Because the thing you reach for in silence often reveals the thing you are afraid to feel. If you reach for constant entertainment, maybe you are afraid of your own grief. If you reach for overworking, maybe you are afraid of feeling unworthy when you are not producing. If you reach for people who drain you, maybe you are afraid of being alone with your own truth. If you reach for fantasy, maybe you are afraid of taking one real step in your actual life. If you reach for doubt, maybe you are afraid that believing again will make disappointment hurt more. Do you see it? Silence was not empty. Silence was diagnostic. It revealed the escape route, and the escape route reveals the wound. But once the wound is revealed, healing can begin. This is why the first knock matters so much. Because God did not begin by demanding that you change everything. He began by showing you where you keep disappearing from yourself. He began by showing you how quickly you abandon stillness. He began by showing you how uncomfortable you are when nothing is distracting you from the deeper truth. And he did this because your next season will require a level of attention your old patterns cannot sustain. You cannot carry divine instruction with a scattered spirit. You cannot discern sacred timing while addicted to noise. You cannot recognize a God-given door if every closed door sends you into panic. You cannot hear a whisper if your inner world is always crowded. So God began with silence. The first knock was quiet because he was not trying to impress you. He was trying to locate you. And maybe that is the sentence your spirit needed. God was not silent because he could not find you. He created silence so you could finally find where you had gone. You had been scattered into responsibilities, scattered into old wounds, scattered into other people's expectations, scattered into survival habits, scattered into late-night thoughts, scattered into fear about the future, scattered into memories of what went wrong, scattered into the version of you that keeps functioning but no longer feels whole. And silence was God gathering you back, piece by piece, breath by breath, truth by truth, not all at once, but enough for you to notice, enough for you to pause, enough for you to say, Something is happening in me, and I cannot keep calling it nothing. Chosen one, that was the first knock. And even if you missed it then, you are seeing it now. That matters, because revelation does not only explain the past, it redeems it. When God shows you what was happening, He is not trying to make you regret what you missed. He is teaching you how to recognize Him next time. And the next time silence comes, you do not have to fear it. You do not have to fill it instantly. You do not have to run from it. You can let it become a room where God brings your scattered pieces back together. You can let it show you what noise has been hiding. You can let it ask the question you have avoided. You can let it become the first place where obedience is born. But remember, silence was only the first knock. And when silence did not fully get your attention, God did not stop reaching. He came another way. The second time He reached through discomfort. Not the kind of discomfort that destroys you, the kind that exposes what no longer fits. The kind that makes old conversations feel heavy. The kind that makes old environments feel smaller. The kind that makes old versions of you impossible to perform. The kind that makes you wonder why you can no longer tolerate what you used to accept. And that is where many chosen ones become confused. Because when God starts making the old life uncomfortable, they think they are becoming difficult. They think they are becoming ungrateful. They think they are losing themselves. But what if discomfort was not proof that something was wrong with you? What if discomfort was the second knock? What if God used discomfort because silence showed you the wound, but discomfort was about to show you the cage? Stay with that, because the first knock was silence. But the second knock was the moment God allowed you to feel what you could no longer carry. And that is where the next part begins. Because discomfort is often the first feeling that appears when God starts showing you what no longer fits. At first, it does not feel holy. It feels irritating. It feels confusing. It feels like you are becoming too sensitive. It feels like something is wrong with you, because the things you used to tolerate suddenly feel heavy. The conversations you used to survive suddenly drain you. The places you used to enter without thinking suddenly make your spirit tighten. And because you do not want to be unfair, you start questioning yourself. Maybe I am being dramatic. Maybe I am just tired. Maybe I am overthinking. Maybe I am the problem. Maybe I need to be more patient. Maybe I need to go back to the way I was. But chosen one, listen closely. Sometimes the old version of you calls it peace because it is familiar. And sometimes the new version of you calls it discomfort because it is finally telling the truth. That is why the second knock can be so easy to miss. It does not always arrive as a clear instruction. It arrives as holy friction. A quiet no in your chest when your mouth is about to say yes. A strange heaviness after a conversation that used to feel normal. A sudden tiredness around people you once tried so hard to impress. A deep uneasiness when you agree to something that looks harmless but feels wrong inside. A loss of taste for the things that used to numb you. A sense that you are standing in a room your body entered, but your spirit has already outgrown. That was not random. That was not just mood. That was not just stress. That may have been the second knock. Because when silence showed you what was loud inside you, discomfort began showing you what was wrong around you. Silence revealed the wound. Discomfort revealed the cage. And that is where many chosen ones become afraid. Because it is one thing to realize you are tired. It is another thing to realize certain people, patterns, habits, and agreements have been feeding that tiredness for years. It is one thing to feel a quiet ache in prayer. It is another thing to notice that every time you return to a certain environment, that ache becomes heavier. It is one thing to say, God, show me what needs to change. It is another thing when He starts making you uncomfortable with the very things you once used to feel safe. This is why you almost clicked away from discomfort. Not because you did not want truth, but because discomfort was about to cost you an old version of belonging. It was about to show you that some places only welcomed the smaller version of you. It was about to show you that some people loved your availability more than they loved your obedience. It was about to show you that some relationships only felt peaceful because you were the one always swallowing the truth. It was about to show you that some doors stayed open only because you kept betraying yourself to remain inside them. And when God begins exposing that, it can feel like your whole life is becoming unstable. But sometimes your life is not becoming unstable. Sometimes the false balance is being disturbed. Sometimes the peace you are losing was never peace. It was performance. It was silence. It was people-pleasing. It was emotional management. It was the constant labor of keeping everyone comfortable while your spirit quietly disappeared. And God loves you too much to let you keep calling that peace. So He knocks through discomfort. He lets the old conversation feel heavy. He lets the old role feel too small. He lets the old coping mechanism stop working. He lets the old approval feel empty. He lets the old pattern begin to irritate you from the inside out. And at first, you may think, why am I becoming like this? Why am I less patient? Why do I feel drained so quickly? Why can I not pretend anymore? Why do I feel like I am standing outside of my own life, watching things I used to accept? Chosen one. What if that is not you becoming worse? What if that is discernment waking up? What if your spirit is no longer willing to cooperate with what your fear kept tolerating? What if the discomfort is not there to punish you, but to protect you? Because there are seasons where God gives comfort, and there are seasons where God removes comfort from the wrong places, so you stop building a home where He only meant you to pass through. That is why certain things suddenly stopped feeling the same. You tried to enjoy them, but something in you stayed restless. You tried to laugh the way you used to laugh, but the laughter did not reach the deeper place. You tried to keep the connection alive, but every interaction left you feeling smaller. You tried to be available the way you always were, but your spirit felt like it was being drained through invisible openings. You tried to go back to normal, but normal no longer fit. And this is where growth guilt begins. Growth guilt is that heavy feeling that rises when you start becoming unavailable to the things that once had unlimited access to you. It is the guilt that says, you are changing too much. It is the guilt that says, you are disappointing people. It is the guilt that says, you are becoming selfish. It is the guilt that says, who do you think you are to need space? It is the guilt that says, if you were truly loving, you would keep carrying this. It is the guilt that says, if you were truly spiritual, you would never feel uncomfortable around them. But not every burden is love. Not every access point is covenant. Not every demand is assignment. Not every expectation deserves obedience. And not every person who feels disappointed by your boundary is being harmed by your growth. Sometimes they are only grieving the version of you they could control. That does not mean you become cold. That does not mean you become proud. That does not mean you start treating people as if they are beneath you. A true chosen one does not grow by becoming cruel. A true chosen one grows by becoming honest. And honesty will feel like cruelty to people who benefited from your confusion. Peace will feel like distance to people who were used to your overextension. Clarity will feel like rejection to people who were comfortable with your uncertainty. Boundaries will feel like betrayal to people who believed your exhaustion was proof of your love. But chosen one, boundaries are not betrayal. Distance is not hatred. Silence is not always punishment. Rest is not laziness. Growth is not arrogance. And obedience is not selfishness just because someone else cannot control it. This is the part of the second knock that you need to understand. God was not only making you uncomfortable with environments, He was making you uncomfortable with the version of you that kept abandoning yourself to be accepted. He was making you uncomfortable with the habit of saying yes, while your spirit whispered, no. He was making you uncomfortable with the pattern of explaining yourself to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. He was making you uncomfortable with the need to be seen as good by people who only called you good when you were useful. He was making you uncomfortable with emotional slavery dressed up as loyalty. That is why the discomfort felt so personal. It was not only around you, it was inside your identity. It touched the role you learned to play: the helper, the fixer, the quiet one, the strong one, the agreeable one, the one who does not need much, the one who always understands, the one who keeps the peace, the one who absorbs the tension, the one who says, "It is okay," even when it is not okay. And God began knocking there. Not because those qualities are evil. Compassion is beautiful. Patience is beautiful. Understanding is beautiful. Being able to bring peace is beautiful. But every gift becomes dangerous when it is separated from obedience. Your compassion becomes self-abandonment when it has no boundary. Your patience becomes fear when it refuses to tell the truth. Your understanding becomes a prison when it excuses what God is asking you to confront. Your ability to keep peace becomes a false altar when you sacrifice your own spirit on it again and again. So God allowed discomfort to rise. He let you feel the cost. He let your body react before your mind could talk you out of it. He let your chest feel heavy. He let your energy drop. He let your joy shrink in certain rooms. He let your spirit become restless under certain expectations. He let your inner world stop cooperating with the lie. And this is important. Your body may have been telling the truth before your mouth had permission to say it. You may have felt tension before you had language. You may have felt drained before you had proof. You may have felt uneasy before you could explain why. You may have felt peace when something ended, even though your mind said you should be sad. And that confused you, because you thought peace would only come from getting what you wanted. But sometimes, peace comes from being released from what was quietly consuming you. Sometimes relief is the confirmation. Sometimes the lighter feeling after saying no is the evidence. Sometimes the quiet after someone leaves is not emptiness. It is your spirit finally having room to breathe. And this is why you cannot judge every decision by who gets upset. You must learn to judge some decisions by what returns to you after the noise fades. Does peace return? Does clarity return? Does your breath feel like it belongs to you again? Does prayer feel less crowded? Does your spirit feel less divided? Does your mind stop rehearsing explanations? Does your body stop bracing for impact? That matters, because discomfort may be the knock, but peace often confirms the door. And yet, many chosen ones ignore this. They feel discomfort, but they call it overthinking. They feel peace after distance, but they call it guilt. They feel drained by a connection, but they call it loyalty. They feel called higher, but they call it pride. They feel God pulling them away, but they call it fear. And the whole time, the Father is gently showing them, this no longer fits the person I am forming. This no longer fits the assignment I am preparing. This no longer fits the level of clarity I am requiring. This no longer fits the season you prayed to enter. Because sometimes you are praying for a new season while emotionally defending the old one. You are asking God for peace while protecting the patterns that steal it. You are asking for clarity while staying attached to confusion. You are asking for purpose while giving your attention to every voice except the one that calls you back to obedience. And God is too kind to bless a prison just because you decorated it with familiarity. He will not always make you comfortable in what is killing your discernment. He will not always let you feel peace in what is shrinking your spirit. He will not always allow you to keep calling it love when it requires you to become less truthful. He will not always let you stay numb just because numb feels easier than change. So he knocks, through discomfort, through irritation, through restlessness, through change tolerance, through the sudden inability to pretend, through the quiet sentence in your spirit that says, I cannot keep doing this. And if that sentence has been rising inside you, do not silence it too quickly. Do not shame it too quickly. Do not call it rebellion too quickly. Bring it before God. Ask for wisdom. Ask for humility. Ask for clean motives. Ask for courage. But do not automatically bury the discomfort just because it threatens the life you are used to. Some discomfort is not there to pull you away from God. Some discomfort is there because God is pulling you away from what has been pulling you away from Him. That is the second knock. And now I want to take this deeper, because discomfort does not only reveal what is around you, it reveals what you are afraid to lose. When a relationship starts feeling misaligned, the deeper question is not only, should this person remain close? The deeper question is, why am I afraid to disappoint them? When an old habit starts feeling empty, the deeper question is not only, should I stop doing this? The deeper question is, what feeling have I been using this habit to avoid? When an environment starts draining you, the deeper question is not only, should I leave? The deeper question is, why did I teach myself to survive in places where my spirit could not breathe? When saying no feels terrifying, the deeper question is not only, do I need a boundary? The deeper question is, when did I start believing love requires unlimited access? Do you see what God is doing? He is not only changing your circumstances, He is exposing the agreements underneath them. The agreement that says, if I am needed, I am valuable. The agreement that says, if I am liked, I am safe. The agreement that says, if no one is upset with me, I am doing the right thing. The agreement that says, if I explain myself perfectly, they will finally understand. The agreement that says, if I keep carrying this, maybe I will finally be chosen. But chosen one, you were chosen before you became useful to anyone. You were seen before you learned how to perform. You were loved before you knew how to keep everyone calm. You were called before you knew how to prove yourself. And the discomfort is trying to break the agreement that your worth depends on how much of yourself you can abandon without complaining. That agreement has been expensive. It cost you rest. It cost you clarity. It cost you honest prayer. It cost you emotional space. It cost you the ability to hear your own spirit without guilt interrupting. And God is saying, I did not create you to be a place where everyone empties their burdens while you have no place to lay yours down. There is a difference between serving and disappearing. There is a difference between loving and enabling. There is a difference between humility and self-erasure. There is a difference between patience and fear of confrontation. There is a difference between forgiveness and giving people endless access to wound you again. And this is where the chosen one must mature. Because immaturity thinks every discomfort is an attack. But discernment asks, what is this discomfort revealing? Immaturity reacts. Discernment listens. Immaturity blames. Discernment examines. Immaturity runs. Discernment brings the feeling into the presence of God and says, Father, show me what is true here. That is the posture. Not panic, not rebellion, not emotional explosion, not cutting everyone off because a message made you feel powerful for a moment. No, this is deeper than that. This is not about becoming unreachable. It is about becoming unavailable to what God has not assigned. It is about becoming faithful with your attention. It is about realizing that every yes has a cost, and every false yes spends energy that was meant for obedience. So here is a simple inner practice for this season. You do not need to move. You do not need to write. You do not need to prove anything. Just picture one area of your life where discomfort keeps returning. A person, a hobby, a place, a commitment, a version of yourself. Let it appear in your mind without forcing an answer. Now ask inwardly, not with fear, but with honesty. Is this discomfort asking me to run, or is it asking me to wake up? Then ask again, is this guilt coming from love, or is it coming from fear of losing approval? And then ask one more question. What would obedience look like if I did not need everyone to understand it? Do not rush the answer. Let the question stand. Sometimes God does not answer by giving you a sentence. Sometimes He answers by making the false answer feel heavier and the true answer feel cleaner. Cleaner does not always mean easier. Cleaner means less divided. Cleaner means less performative. Cleaner means your spirit does not have to twist itself to agree. Cleaner means the decision may cost you comfort, but it returns your integrity. That is what you are looking for, not the easiest path, the cleanest one, because the chosen path is not always the path with no pain. Sometimes it is the path where the pain is honest, the path where grief leads to freedom instead of bondage, the path where discomfort leads to alignment instead of confusion, the path where a no protects the yes God is preparing. And if this is speaking to you, there is a sentence you can place below as a marker of agreement. I am allowed to grow without apologizing for God's work in me. Not because you are better than anyone, not because you are above correction, not because every feeling you have is automatically divine, but because when God is forming you, you do not have to keep shrinking just to make your old life comfortable. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to stop performing the version of yourself that pain created. You are allowed to need space. You are allowed to hear God for yourself. You are allowed to obey before everyone understands. You are allowed to protect what is still being formed in you. You are allowed to become quieter with people who only listened when you over-explained. You are allowed to become less available to chaos. You are allowed to become more faithful to peace. And you do not owe an apology for becoming someone God can trust with the next season. This is not selfishness. This is stewardship. You are stewarding your spirit. You are stewarding your attention. You are stewarding your obedience. You are stewarding the inner place where God speaks. And not everyone should have equal access to that place. Some people can stand near your life but not inside your inner sanctuary. Some voices can be respected without being obeyed. Some relationships can be loved from a wiser distance. Some demands can be acknowledged without being carried. Some expectations can be disappointing to others and still be right before God. This is the maturity discomfort is producing. It is not making you harsh. It is making you honest. It is not making you distant. It is making you discerning. It is not making you cold. It is making you clean. It is not making you proud. It is making you obedient. And obedience often begins with a discomfort you stop dismissing. There is a moment in the life of Elijah that carries this kind of tenderness. He had seen fire fall. He had stood in power. He had confronted what others feared. And yet, after the intensity, he found himself exhausted, afraid, and alone. And what I love is that God did not meet him first with shame. God did not say, "How dare you be tired after all I have shown you?" God did not mock his exhaustion. God gave him rest. God gave him nourishment. God met him in a quiet place. And then came the gentle voice, not in the wind, not in the earthquake, not in the fire, but in the stillness. This matters because Elijah's story shows us that a chosen person can be powerful and tired at the same time, called and overwhelmed at the same time, anointed and in need of care at the same time, used by God and still needing God to restore their inner world. So when discomfort rises in you, do not automatically assume God is disappointed. Sometimes he is drawing you into a quieter honesty. Sometimes he is showing you that the pace, the pressure, the people, or the pattern cannot come with you in the same way. Sometimes he is not asking you to fight harder. Sometimes he is asking you to stop agreeing with what keeps draining the oil from your lamp. Because if the enemy cannot make you abandon your calling, he will try to make you carry so much that you have no strength to fulfill it. He will give you false emergencies, false guilt, false responsibility, false loyalty, false peace, false obligations, false identities. And if you accept all of them, you may still look faithful on the outside while becoming spiritually unavailable on the inside. This is why discomfort is mercy. It warns you before collapse. It tells you the cost before the cost becomes your life. It whispers, "This is too heavy," before your body has to scream. It says, "This is not clean," before your discernment becomes numb. It says, This is not aligned. Before you build a future around a false agreement, do not despise that mercy. Do not silence it because it makes other people uncomfortable. Do not medicate every sacred uneasiness with noise. Do not bury every inner warning under the fear of being misunderstood. Bring it to God. Let Him purify it. Let Him separate wound from wisdom. Let Him separate fear from discernment. Let Him separate offense from truth. Let Him separate avoidance from obedience. Because not all discomfort is direction. Some discomfort comes from fear. Some comes from pride. Some comes from old trauma. Some comes from the flesh, resisting growth. But some discomfort is holy, and the work of discernment is learning the difference. Holy discomfort does not usually make you frantic. It makes you sober. It does not make you cruel. It makes you clear. It does not push you to destroy. It invites you to align. It does not demand that you prove something. It invites you to obey something. It does not inflate your ego. It humbles you into truth. That is one way you begin to recognize it. Fear screams, "Run now." Pride says, "They do not deserve you." Woundedness says, "Protect yourself from everyone." But holy discomfort says, "Pay attention. Something here is no longer aligned. Something here is asking for a response. Something here cannot remain unconscious." And that is why you almost missed the second knock. Because it did not flatter you. It did not simply say, "You are special." It said, "You must become honest." It said, "You must stop calling every attachment love." It said, "You must stop calling every opportunity God." It said, "You must stop calling every open door assignment." It said, "You must stop calling every familiar thing safe." It said, "You must stop calling every guilty feeling truth." That kind of message is harder to receive, but it is the kind that saves your future. Because what you tolerate in one season can become the chain you have to break in the next. What you ignore in your spirit can become confusion in your decisions. What you refuse to name can become a pattern you keep repeating. And what you call small today can become the reason you feel stuck tomorrow. So God knocked through discomfort before the misalignment became your identity. He let you feel it before you fully understood it. He let you sense it before you had the words. He let the old thing become heavy before it became destructive. He let the wrong fit become obvious before you built your life around it. That is mercy. And the sign that this is reaching something real in you is not that you feel condemned. It is that you feel seen. You may feel challenged. You may feel quiet. You may feel a little exposed. But underneath it, there is a strange relief. Because finally, someone is putting language to what you have been carrying. Finally, you are realizing you are not crazy for noticing what changed. You are not cruel for needing space. You are not faithless for admitting that something feels off. You are not broken because your tolerance changed. You are not losing yourself. You may be returning to yourself. The self God can actually lead. The self that does not need chaos to feel needed. The self that does not need confusion to feel humble. The self that does not need approval to feel safe. The self that can love without disappearing. The self that can serve without being swallowed. The self that can forgive without reopening every door. The self that can be gentle and still have a boundary. The self that can be chosen and still be human. That is what discomfort is forming in you. Not rebellion, capacity. Not coldness, clarity. Not isolation, consecration. Not distance from love, distance from distortion. And when you understand this, you stop asking, "Why am I so uncomfortable?" You begin asking, "What is God showing me through this discomfort?" That question changes everything, because now discomfort is no longer just a feeling to escape. It becomes a messenger to examine, a light on the dashboard, a hand on your shoulder, a knock on the door of your discernment. And when you answer it with wisdom, you do not have to explode. You do not have to announce everything. You do not have to make dramatic exits. You do not have to prove that you are right. You can move with quiet obedience, You can reduce access without hatred. You can pause before agreeing. You can let your yes become honest. You can let your no become peaceful. You can let your silence become clean instead of passive-aggressive. You can let your growth become steady instead of performative. That is the way of the chosen one. Deep, not dramatic. Clear, not cruel. Soft, but not shapeless. Loving, but not lawless. Open, but not unguarded. And the more you walk this way, the more you will realize that God was not trying to make your life smaller through discomfort. He was trying to make your obedience cleaner, because the next season will require clean obedience. Not forced obedience, not guilt-driven obedience, not obedience performed for applause, not obedience that needs everyone to approve. Clean obedience, the kind that says, God, even if I do not understand all of this yet, I will stop betraying the conviction you keep placing inside me. That is where the second knock leads. It leads you to a decision. Will you keep calling discomfort stress so you do not have to change? Or will you let God show you what no longer fits? Will you keep apologizing for growth? Or will you let God mature your love so it can have boundaries? Will you keep confusing guilt with guidance? Or will you let peace become part of your discernment? Will you keep returning to the cage because it is familiar? Or will you finally admit that discomfort has been telling the truth? And I know this is not easy, because once you admit something no longer fits, you cannot fully unknow it. You may still have to move slowly. You may still need wisdom. You may still need patience. You may still need to pray through the details. But the pretending begins to break. And when the pretending breaks, a chosen one becomes dangerous to every lie that depended on their silence. That is why the second knock matters. It does not only reveal misalignment, it begins restoring authority. The authority to notice, the authority to pause, the authority to choose, the authority to protect peace, the authority to say, I will not keep calling this normal if God is showing me it is not aligned. And maybe that authority feels new to you. Maybe you have spent so long being guided by guilt that peace feels suspicious. Maybe you have spent so long managing reactions that obedience feels selfish. Maybe you have spent so long surviving discomfort that you do not know how to interpret it as a message. But you are learning now. You are learning that God can speak through silence. You are learning that God can speak through discomfort. You are learning that not every heavy feeling is something to ignore. You are learning that not every guilty feeling is something to obey. You are learning that not every relationship needs the same access. You are learning that not every open door is your assignment. You are learning that not every version of you deserves to be carried into the future. And that learning is holy. It may feel like loss at first, but sometimes what feels like loss is only the removal of what kept you divided. Sometimes what feels like distance is only God restoring your inner hearing. Sometimes what feels like a smaller circle is actually a cleaner altar. Sometimes what feels like discomfort is God saying, you asked me to lead you, and this is me leading you out of what you were too loyal to leave on your own. The second knock was not there to hurt you. It was there to wake up your discernment. But even then, you almost missed it. You almost explained it away. You almost called it mood. You almost called it stress. You almost called it being too sensitive. You almost went back to pretending. And grace came again, because God knew discomfort alone might not be enough. He knew you might still choose the familiar cage if the door opened too quietly. He knew you might still defend the old pattern if leaving it required too much courage. He knew you might still say, not yet. So when silence did not fully get your attention and discomfort did not fully make you respond, the third knock came in a form that many chosen ones misunderstand more than anything else. Delay. The thing you prayed for slowed down. The door you expected did not open. The answer you wanted did not arrive when you thought it should. The relationship did not move. The opportunity did not land. The promise seemed suspended in the air. And because delay touched the oldest wound in you, you almost called it rejection. But what if delay was not rejection? What if delay was the third knock? What if God slowed something down, not because he was refusing you, but because he was protecting what you were not ready to carry yet? That is where the next part begins. Because delay touches one of the deepest wounds in a chosen one. It does not simply make you wait. It makes you wonder. It makes you question what you heard. It makes you look back at every prayer, every sign, every moment of courage, every step of obedience, and ask, did I misunderstand God? That is why delay can feel more painful than silence. Silence made you face what was inside you. Discomfort made you face what no longer fit around you. But delay makes you face what you believe about God when nothing is changing fast enough to comfort you. And that is where many chosen ones almost walk away. Not because they no longer want the promise, but because waiting has touched a place in them that already felt abandoned. When the door does not open, it does not just feel like a door. It feels like rejection. When the answer does not come, it does not just feel like time. It feels like being forgotten. When the relationship does not move, the opportunity does not land, the breakthrough does not arrive, the confirmation does not become visible. It does not just feel delayed. It feels personal, and the enemy knows how to use delay as a weapon against your trust. He whispers, "See, nothing is happening." He whispers, "You were foolish to hope." He whispers, "God does this for other people, not for you." He whispers, "If it was meant for you, it would not be this hard." He whispers, "If God was really speaking, you would have proof by now." But chosen one, not every delay is a denial. Not every closed door is rejection. Not every slow season is punishment. Not every unanswered prayer is heaven ignoring you. Sometimes delay is the third knock. Sometimes God slows something down because there is something under the surface that must be formed before what is visible can be trusted. Sometimes he withholds speed because speed would take you into a room your character is not ready to govern. Sometimes he delays the connection because loneliness would make you accept what discernment would have rejected. Sometimes he delays the opportunity because ambition would have entered before humility was ready. Sometimes he delays the breakthrough because the gift is real, but the foundation still needs depth. And I know that may not be the answer your tired heart wanted first, because when you are waiting, you do not always want formation language. You want relief. You want proof. You want the door. You want the call. You want the message. You want the release. You want the answer that lets your nervous system finally stop bracing. But God does not only love the version of you that receives the promise. He loves the version of you that would be harmed by receiving it too soon. And that is the mercy hidden in delay. The part of you that feels rejected may not be able to see it yet. But the Father sees what premature access can do. He sees what happens when a wounded person enters a blessed door, but still carries an unhealed need for validation. He sees what happens when someone receives visibility before they are free from people-pleasing. He sees what happens when someone receives provision before they know the difference between stewardship and proving themselves. He sees what happens when someone receives love before they have healed enough to recognize manipulation. He sees what happens when someone receives influence before their identity is rooted. And because he sees the end from the beginning, he sometimes answers your prayer by slowing the thing you are begging him to speed up. That does not mean he is cruel. It means he is careful. That does not mean he is late. It means he is precise. That does not mean he forgot. It means he is not willing to give your future to a version of you that would be crushed by it. Delay is painful because it feels like nothing is moving. But delay is often where the deepest movement happens. Roots move in delay. Character moves in delay. Discernment moves in delay. Motives move in delay. Identity moves in delay. Your capacity moves in delay. And by the time the visible thing opens, the invisible thing has already been prepared to carry it. This is why you cannot judge the faithfulness of God by the speed of the answer. Some answers come quickly because the door is simple. Some answers take longer because the door is weighty, and you have been asking for weighty things. You have been asking for purpose. You have been asking for a clean life. You have been asking for divine connection. You have been asking for restoration. You have been asking for clarity. You have been asking for the kind of assignment that does not just bless you, but changes the atmosphere around you. Those things require more than desire. They require formation. And formation rarely moves at the speed of frustration. It moves at the speed of readiness. That is why the third knock came through delay. God allowed you to feel the tension between what you wanted and what you were ready to carry. He allowed you to notice how quickly impatience can disguise itself as discernment. He allowed you to notice how easily comparison can turn your prayer life bitter. He allowed you to notice how your trust behaves when heaven does not explain itself on your schedule. He allowed you to notice what rises in you when the promise is not denied, but also not delivered yet. That middle place is where many chosen ones are tested. Not the place where everything is lost. Not the place where everything is fulfilled. The middle, the waiting, the whole way, the wilderness between the word and the manifestation. The space where you have just enough confirmation to keep believing, but not enough control to stop depending on God. That is the place where delay speaks. And if you listen carefully, delay asks questions that success could never ask. Do you still trust God when there is no applause? Do you still obey when there is no visible reward? Do you still believe when nobody else sees the sign? Do you still prepare when the door has not opened? Do you still guard your heart when the promise is taking longer than you expected? Do you still choose integrity when shortcuts appear? Do you still become who God called you to be when life has not yet confirmed it externally? That is not punishment. That is preparation. Because the delay is not only measuring your patience, it is revealing your attachment. It is showing whether you are attached to God or only attached to what you want God to do. It is showing whether your peace depends on His presence or only on His performance. It is showing whether your identity is rooted in being chosen or in being visibly successful. It is showing whether you want the assignment or only the relief the assignment might bring. And this is where the third knock becomes deeply personal, because delay exposes what hurry hides. Hurry hides fear. Hurry hides insecurity. Hurry hides comparison. Hurry hides the need to prove. Hurry hides the belief that if something takes too long, you must not be loved. But delay brings those things to the surface, so they can be healed before they govern your next season. Chosen one, you did not just need the door to open. You needed to become the kind of person who would not lose yourself once it did. You did not just need the relationship to arrive. You needed to become someone who could love without begging to be chosen. You did not just need the opportunity. You needed to become someone who could stand in it without letting attention become an idol. You did not just need provision. You needed to become someone who could receive without fear, manage without ego, and give without emptiness. You did not just need clarity. You needed to become someone who would obey clarity once it came. That is what delay was forming. And maybe now you can look back and see some of it. The door that did not open when you wanted it to. The person who did not choose you when you were desperate to be chosen. The plan that fell apart after you were sure it was the answer. The season that lasted longer than your confidence. The promise that seemed to hover just out of reach. At the time you thought, God, why? Why not now? Why them and not me? Why did you let me hope if you were going to make me wait? Why did you show me something I could not yet touch? Why did you awaken desire before you opened the door? Those questions are human. They are not shameful. A chosen one is allowed to ask God honest questions. Faith is not pretending delay does not hurt. Faith is bringing the hurt into the presence of God instead of letting hurt become your theology. Because if pain becomes your teacher without the presence of God, it will teach you the wrong lesson. Pain will tell you delay means rejection. God will tell you delay can mean preparation. Pain will tell you waiting means you are behind. God will tell you appointed time does not compete with anyone else's calendar. Pain will tell you closed doors mean you are unwanted. God will tell you some doors closed because they were too small for the person He is forming. Pain will tell you silence means abandonment. God will tell you silence was the first knock. Pain will tell you discomfort means something is wrong with you. God will tell you discomfort was the second knock. And now pain may be telling you delay means it is over. But God is showing you delay was the third knock. Do you see the pattern? The first knock did not look like a message. The second knock did not feel like guidance. The third knock did not look like mercy. But all three were speaking. Silence said, "Come back to yourself." Discomfort said, "This no longer fits." Delay said, "You are not being denied, you are being prepared." And once you see that, your past begins to change shape. Not because the pain was not real. It was real. Not because waiting was easy. It was not. Not because every closed door was pleasant. It hurt. But because now you can see that God was working inside seasons your fear misinterpreted. And that is one of the deepest forms of healing. When God does not only change your future, but reinterprets your past. When He shows you that what you called abandonment was actually protection. What you called rejection was actually redirection. What you called slowness was actually mercy. What you called being hidden was actually being covered. What you called being behind was actually being kept from premature exposure. That is why you must be careful with the meaning you assign to your waiting. Because the meaning you assign to your waiting will shape the person you become inside it. If you call delay rejection, you will wait bitter. If you call delay punishment, you will wait ashamed. If you call delay proof that God forgot you, you will wait guarded. If you call delay preparation, you will wait awake. Not passive, awake. Not lazy, awake. Not pretending everything is easy, awake. You will begin asking, what is being formed in me here? What is being removed from me here? What am I learning in the delay that I could not have learned in the answer? What part of my identity still needs healing before the next door opens? What kind of obedience is possible right now, even before the promise arrives? That is how a chosen one waits well. Waiting well does not mean sitting in a corner doing nothing. Waiting well means becoming faithful in the part of the story that does not yet make sense. It means practicing integrity when nobody sees. It means healing the wound that would sabotage the blessing. It means developing the skill that the open door will require. It means letting God correct your motives before visibility magnifies them. It means refusing to let comparison poison the season that is preparing you. It means saying, God, if you are not moving this yet, form me here. Not because I love waiting, not because this does not hurt, but because I refuse to waste the wilderness. And maybe that sentence is for you. I refuse to waste the wilderness. Not every wilderness is a punishment. Some wilderness seasons are classrooms. Some wilderness seasons are hospitals. Some wilderness seasons are training grounds. Some wilderness seasons are hidden altars where the version of you that craves applause finally learns how to love obedience. Moses knew something about that. Before he became a deliverer in front of people, he spent years in hidden places where no crowd was calling his name. The desert did not look like promotion. It looked like delay. It looked like loss. It looked like exile. It looked like the opposite of the assignment. And yet, the very wilderness that looked like wasted time became the place where he was formed for what he could not have carried in his own strength. The desert slowed him down. The desert humbled him. The desert stripped the false confidence. The desert taught him terrain he would later have to lead others through. That is the mystery of God's preparation. Sometimes the place you think is delaying your destiny is secretly training you for it. Sometimes the environment that feels like nothing is happening is giving you language for people you will later help. Sometimes the season you keep asking God to end is teaching you how to endure what your assignment will require. Sometimes the very thing you call delay becomes evidence that God was thinking further ahead than you were. Because you were asking for arrival, God was preparing leadership. You were asking for the door. God was preparing the hands that would carry what was behind the door. You were asking for escape. God was preparing authority. You were asking for speed. God was preparing depth. And depth takes time. A shallow root can grow fast, but it cannot stand long. A deep root grows quietly, slowly, invisibly, but when the storm comes, it remains. That is what God has been doing in you. You wanted the visible fruit. He was deepening the hidden root. You wanted the public answer. He was building private capacity. You wanted the quick release. He was forming long obedience. You wanted the promise now. He was making sure the promise would not destroy you when it came. This is why delay must be interpreted through love, not fear. If you believe God is against you, every delay will feel like evidence. If you believe God is careless, every waiting season will feel like neglect. If you believe God is only kind when He gives quickly, you will lose faith every time He prepares slowly. But if you believe the Father is good, then even delay becomes something you can bring into His presence and say, I do not understand this yet, but I trust that you are not wasting me. That sentence is not easy, but it is powerful. I trust that you are not wasting me. Because one of the cruelest lies delay can tell a chosen one is that their life is being wasted. Wasted years, wasted effort, wasted prayers, wasted love, wasted preparation, wasted waiting, wasted tears. But in the hands of God, nothing surrendered is wasted. Pain is not wasted when it becomes compassion. Waiting is not wasted when it becomes wisdom. Rejection is not wasted when it becomes discernment. Delay is not wasted when it becomes capacity. Hiddenness is not wasted when it becomes intimacy. Loss is not wasted when it becomes depth. Even your mistakes are not wasted when humility brings them to God. That does not mean everything that happened was good. It means God is good enough to redeem what happened. There is a difference, and a mature chosen one must learn that difference. You do not need to call every wound a blessing. You do not need to pretend every delay felt beautiful. You do not need to decorate pain with spiritual language. You can say, this hurt. You can say, I did not understand. You can say, I felt forgotten. You can say, I wrestled with God in that season. You can say, I almost gave up. And still say, but He was there. Still say, but He kept me. Still say, but He formed something in me. Still say, but I see now that the delay did not have the final word. That is the place where healing begins to rewrite your waiting. Not by denying the ache, but by revealing the hidden mercy. And if this part is speaking to you, I want you to notice something. You may have been waiting for an answer, but God may have been waiting for agreement. Not agreement with fear. Not agreement with shame. Agreement with the formation. Agreement with the preparation. Agreement with the deeper work. Agreement that says, I will not call myself rejected just because I am not released yet. Agreement that says, I will not call myself behind just because I am not moving at another person's pace. Agreement that says, I will not let impatience make me suspicious of God's love. Agreement that says, I will not turn delay into an excuse to abandon obedience. Because delay becomes dangerous when you let it make you careless. When you start saying, if nothing is happening, then nothing matters. When you start lowering your standards because the promise has taken too long. When you start entertaining distractions because obedience feels unrewarded. When you start accepting less because the best has not arrived yet. When you start treating waiting like permission to return to old patterns. That is how many chosen ones almost sabotage the thing they are waiting for. They get tired of waiting, so they make agreements with substitutes. They get tired of loneliness, so they attach to what drains them. They get tired of hiddenness, so they chase visibility before character is ready. They get tired of uncertainty, so they choose something clear but not aligned. They get tired of preparation, so they call impatience a sign. And then later, they wonder why peace did not follow. Chosen one. Delay is not permission to lower the standard God gave you. Delay is not permission to reopen the door he closed. Delay is not permission to call the counterfeit a blessing because it arrived faster. Delay is not permission to betray the quiet conviction that has been protecting you. Delay is not permission to become bitter toward the very God who is keeping you. Delay is a call to deeper stewardship. Steward the waiting. Steward the silence. Steward the longing. Steward the questions. Steward the preparation. Steward the version of you that is being formed while nothing seems to be moving. And here is where the third knock becomes a test of attention. Because delay will try to scatter your attention in every direction. You will look at other people's timelines. You will replay old decisions. You will imagine worst-case outcomes. You will question every sign. You will search for proof that you are not forgotten. You will try to force meaning out of every small event. And if you are not careful, waiting will turn your inner world into noise. That is why the first knock and the third knock are connected. Silence taught you to notice the noise. Delay tests whether you will return to it. Will you fill the waiting with panic? Will you fill the waiting with comparison? Will you fill the waiting with substitutes? Will you fill the waiting with resentment? Or will you let waiting become a place where your attention becomes sacred again? This matters because the fifth knock will require attention. You cannot answer a sacred moment with a scattered spirit. You cannot recognize appointed time if comparison has trained you to despise your own. You cannot receive the next instruction if bitterness has made you allergic to trust. And this is why, later in this message, we will touch something deeper that many people never connect. The state of your attention affects the way you hear, not only spiritually, but mentally. Modern life has trained the mind to live in fragments. A little fear here, a little noise there, a little distraction here, a little comparison there, a little hope, then a sudden interruption, a little prayer, then a flood of anxious thoughts, a little clarity, then the mind reaches for something to numb the weight of it. And when the mind is constantly pulled into survival, even a true message can feel distant. Even a real conviction can feel blurry. Even a divine signal can be swallowed by mental fog. We will return to that because there is a reason God is not only restoring your faith, He is restoring your ability to pay attention. But before that can make sense, you need to understand what delay was protecting. Because if you do not understand what delay was protecting, you may resent the very mercy that saved you. Think about the thing you wanted too soon. Not with shame, just honesty. If God had given it exactly when you asked, what version of you would have received it? Would it have been the version still desperate to prove something? Would it have been the version still afraid to say no? Would it have been the version still addicted to external validation? Would it have been the version still confusing intensity with love? Would it have been the version still calling anxiety discernment? Would it have been the version still willing to abandon peace for acceptance? Would it have been the version still carrying old wounds into new rooms? This is not to say you had to be perfect. God does not require perfection before blessing. If He did, no one would receive anything. But there is a difference between being imperfect and being unprepared. Imperfect means you still need grace. Unprepared means the weight would break what grace is still building. And delay often lives in that difference. God can bless imperfect people. He does it constantly. But when something is tied to your assignment, your influence, your future, your healing, your capacity to love well, your ability to carry responsibility, He may take the time to prepare you so the blessing does not become another battlefield. Because the enemy does not only attack through lack. Sometimes he attacks through premature abundance. He lets someone receive attention before identity is healed. Then attention becomes addiction. He lets someone receive money before fear is healed. Then money becomes control. He lets someone receive love before abandonment is healed. Then love becomes obsession. He lets someone receive opportunity before character is formed. Then opportunity becomes collapse. He lets someone receive influence before humility is deep. Then influence becomes performance. God sees that. So sometimes He protects you from the version of a blessing that would have become dangerous in the hands of an unhealed place. And yes, it still hurts. Protection can hurt when you wanted possession. Redirection can hurt when you wanted arrival. Preparation can hurt when you wanted proof. But one day, the chosen one begins to look back and say, if that had happened when I wanted it, I might have lost myself inside it. If that person had chosen me then, I might have called control love. If that door had opened then, I might have entered with the wrong motives. If that platform had elevated me then, I might have performed instead of served. If that money had come then, I might have used it to cover insecurity instead of steward purpose. If that dream had happened then, I might have built it on the same wound God was trying to heal. And suddenly, delay becomes mercy. Not easy mercy, but mercy. This is where appointed time matters. There is a kind of time that is measured by clocks, minutes, days, months, years, deadlines, age, comparison, other people's milestones. But there is another kind of time that Scripture often points to, appointed time, a moment that is not only about when something happens, but whether the conditions are aligned for it to carry the purpose God gave it. The Greeks had a word often used for this kind of time, kairos. It speaks of the right time, the appointed moment, the fitting season, not just time passing, time becoming meaningful. And this matters because many chosen ones are tormented by ordinary time. I am this age. I should be further. They already have it. I have been waiting too long. The year is almost over. The door should have opened by now. But God does not build your calling only by the pressure of the clock. He works by appointed time. A door can open early and still be wrong. A door can open later and still be exactly on time. A connection can arrive after heartbreak and still be appointed. A breakthrough can come after hidden years and still be precise. A promise can look delayed to people and still be right on schedule in the hands of God. That does not mean you become passive. It means you stop worshipping the clock. You stop letting comparison interpret your season. You stop measuring God's faithfulness by whether your life matches another person's timeline. You stop calling yourself behind in a race God never asked you to run. Chosen one, you are not late because someone else arrived sooner. You are not forgotten because someone else was seen first. You are not disqualified because your preparation took longer. You are not failing because God is working beneath the surface. You are not behind when you are in formation. You are not behind when you are being healed. You are not behind when your root is growing deeper. You are not behind when the Father is teaching you how to carry what you prayed for. And yes, there are practical decisions to make. Yes, there are actions to take. Yes, waiting well does not mean doing nothing. But there is a difference between faithful movement and frantic forcing. Faithful movement comes from alignment. Frantic forcing comes from fear. Faithful movement has peace under it, even when it is hard. Frantic forcing has panic under it, even when it looks productive. Faithful movement can obey one step at a time. Frantic forcing tries to control the whole staircase. Faithful movement says, I will do what is mine to do. Frantic forcing says, I must make this happen, or I am nothing. Delay is where God teaches you the difference. And if you do not learn that difference, you will keep exhausting yourself, trying to force open doors that are not appointed, while ignoring the quiet preparation that is actually yours. So let this become a mental practice for you, not something you have to write, not something you have to perform, just an inner question when delay starts making you restless. Ask yourself, am I being invited to move, or am I being tempted to force? Then ask, is this step coming from peace or from panic? Then ask, if I did not need to prove anything today, what would obedience look like? That last question is important, because sometimes obedience in delay looks small. It looks like refusing to text the person you know God is asking you to release. It looks like continuing to prepare even when nobody is watching. It looks like choosing rest instead of panic research. It looks like praying honestly instead of performing confidence. It looks like not lowering your standards just because loneliness got loud. It looks like blessing someone else without using their timeline to curse your own. It looks like doing the next clean thing, not the impressive thing, the clean thing. And if you need a sentence to anchor this part of your life, let it be this: I will not call preparation rejection. You can place that in the comments if it feels true for you. I will not call preparation rejection. Not as a performance, not as a slogan, as a witness, as a line in the sand, as a way of telling your own spirit, I am done interpreting every delay through the wound of abandonment. I am done calling God absent just because he is careful. I am done turning waiting into bitterness. I am done using comparison to accuse my own life. I am done treating preparation like punishment. I will not call preparation rejection. Let that sentence settle, because some of you have been grieving a delay that God has been using as a covering. You thought you were exposed, but you were covered. You thought you were ignored, but you were hidden. You thought you were behind, but you were being built. You thought you were denied, but you were being developed. You thought you were losing time, but God was deepening what time alone could not produce. And this is why the third knock matters. Because if you misread delay, you may reject the preparation. And if you reject the preparation, you may not recognize the appointed moment when it comes. A person who hates the waiting often enters the answer with suspicion. A person who despises the wilderness often misses the wisdom it gave them. A person who calls every delay rejection often cannot receive love without expecting abandonment. A person who treats hiddenness as failure often performs when visibility comes. But a chosen one who lets delay do its holy work becomes different. They become slower to panic, slower to compare, slower to chase, slower to compromise, slower to call every open door God, slower to call every closed door failure. And at the same time, they become quicker to discern, quicker to obey, quicker to return to peace, quicker to recognize the difference between a counterfeit and a calling, quicker to say, I have waited too long with God to rush now without him. That is maturity. That is what delay can produce when it is surrendered. And maybe this is why the thing has not moved the way you wanted. Not because God is withholding love, but because he is producing maturity that can survive the blessing. There are blessings immature people pray for that mature people handle with trembling. There are doors immature people would rush into that mature people approach with reverence. There are assignments immature people would use to feel important that mature people receive as responsibility. There are relationships immature people would idolize that mature people steward with humility. There are resources immature people would spend to prove worth that mature people use to build purpose. Delay is one of the places where God turns desire into stewardship. And that is not a small thing, because a chosen one is not only called to receive, a chosen one is called to carry. And carrying requires capacity. If you receive without capacity, the gift becomes pressure. If you enter without formation, the room becomes a test you were not ready to pass. If you love without healing, intimacy becomes a place where old wounds start speaking louder than truth. If you lead without humility, influence becomes a mirror for ego. If you prosper without wisdom, provision becomes another way to escape yourself. So God prepares the vessel, slowly, deeply, privately, often painfully. And while he prepares it, it may look like delay. But heaven sees construction. Heaven sees the root. Heaven sees the foundation. Heaven sees the hidden yes. Heaven sees the small obedience. Heaven sees the tears you cried and still chose not to become bitter. Heaven sees the doors you did not force. Heaven sees the substitutes you refused. Heaven sees the prayers you prayed when your feelings did not agree. Heaven sees the discipline nobody applauded. Heaven sees the healing you kept returning to. Heaven sees the wilderness work, and none of it is wasted. Even when people do not see it, even when you cannot explain it, even when it feels like nothing has changed. Even when your circumstances look the same, even when your faith feels tired, even when the promise feels distant, the delay is not empty. The delay is speaking, and now you are learning how to hear it. You are learning that silence can be a knock. You are learning that discomfort can be a knock. You are learning that delay can be a knock, and each one has been trying to bring you to the same place. Attention, alignment, readiness. God is not only trying to get something to you, He is trying to make sure you are present enough to receive it without losing yourself. And this is where the mystery deepens, because the first 3 knocks were not separate random experiences. They were connected. Silence cleared the noise. Discomfort revealed the misalignment. Delay formed the capacity. One cleared, one revealed, one formed. And if you look closely, you may see this pattern across your own life. A quiet season came. Then discomfort rose. Then something slowed down. At the time, each one felt like a different problem. But what if they were 3 parts of the same divine interruption? What if God was not randomly allowing strange seasons? What if He was patiently gathering your attention from 3 directions? First, He quieted what distracted you. Then He unsettled what confined you. Then He slowed what could have overwhelmed you. And He did all of it because something in your life was approaching a threshold. This is why the 5th knock matters. Because by the time the 5th knock comes, God is not only asking, "Did you notice the sign?" He is asking, "Have you become ready to respond?" There is a difference. Noticing is awareness. Responding is obedience. Many chosen ones notice. Fewer respond. They notice the repeated sign, but keep living the same way. They notice the discomfort, but keep agreeing to the same burdens. They notice the delay, but become bitter instead of formed. They notice the exhaustion, but keep performing the false self. They notice the knock, but do not open the door. And God, in His mercy, keeps coming. But each knock is not only a message, it is an invitation into maturity. The first knock asks, "Will you be still enough to hear?" The second knock asks, "Will you be honest enough to admit what no longer fits?" The third knock asks, "Will you trust enough to be formed before you are released?" And the fourth knock, the one we have not entered yet, asks something even deeper. Will you stop carrying what is killing your capacity? Because there is a kind of exhaustion that comes from hard work, and there is a kind of exhaustion that comes from misalignment. There is a tiredness that comes after obedience, and there is a tiredness that comes from performing a version of yourself God never asked you to maintain. That is why the next knock is so important, because after silence, discomfort, and delay, God allowed you to feel the full weight of what you had been carrying. Not to destroy you, not to shame you, not to prove you were weak, but to show you that some burdens were never yours. And before we go there, let this truth settle in your spirit. Delay did not mean God forgot you. Delay did not mean the promise died. Delay did not mean you were unworthy. Delay did not mean heaven lost your address. Delay did not mean your prayers were wasted. Delay did not mean your obedience was invisible. Delay did not mean your preparation was pointless. Delay was the third knock, a painful knock, a slow knock, a quiet knock, but still a knock. And now that you can recognize it, you do not have to keep calling every waiting season rejection. You can ask better questions. God, what are you forming? God, what are you protecting? God, what are you healing? God, what are you strengthening? God, what are you asking me to steward while I wait? God, what would obedience look like here? These questions do not erase the ache, but they keep the ache from becoming unbelief. They keep the waiting from becoming bitterness. They keep the delay from becoming identity. Because you are not the delayed one. You are the prepared one. You are not the forgotten one. You are the formed one. You are not the rejected one. You are the protected one. You are not the one God skipped. You are the one He slowed down because the wait ahead required roots. And roots grow in places nobody celebrates. So do not despise the hidden work. Do not curse the season that is building what the next season will require. Do not let the clock shame what God is forming. Do not let comparison steal the holiness of your preparation. Do not let delay make you careless with your standards. Do not let waiting convince you to accept a counterfeit. And do not let the pain of not yet make you forget the God who has already carried you this far. The third knock was delay, and maybe you almost missed it. Maybe you almost called it rejection. Maybe you almost let it make you bitter. Maybe you almost decided that if the answer was not coming fast enough, then obedience did not matter. But grace came again, because God knew delay alone might not fully wake you. He knew the waiting had revealed your impatience, your fear, your comparison, your need for proof. But there was still something deeper. There were burdens you had normalized, responsibilities you had adopted, roles you had performed for so long that you started confusing them with your identity. And if God did not interrupt that, you might have entered the next season carrying the weight of an old life. So the fourth knock came through exhaustion, not ordinary tiredness, not just needing one good night of sleep, a deeper exhaustion, the kind that reaches the bones, the kind that makes even simple things feel heavy, the kind that makes you wonder why you can no longer keep pretending, the kind that says, something in me cannot continue like this. And what if that exhaustion was not the end of you? What if it was the mercy that finally stopped the false version of you from driving your life any further? That is where the next knock begins. Because the fourth knock does not feel like guidance at first. It feels like weakness. It feels like something in you finally ran out. It feels like the version of you who could always push through, always explain, always carry, always endure, always smile, always function, suddenly cannot keep doing it anymore. And that is terrifying for a chosen one, because many chosen ones built their identity around being able to survive what would have broken other people. You learned how to keep moving with a heavy heart. You learned how to show up when you were empty. You learned how to answer messages while needing answers yourself. You learned how to comfort people while your own spirit was tired. You learned how to be responsible while secretly resenting how much everyone expected from you. You learned how to look strong because somewhere along the way, strength became the only language people rewarded in you. So when exhaustion came, you did not call it a message. You called it failure. You said, "What is wrong with me? Why can I not do what I used to do? Why am I tired in a way sleep does not fix? Why do small things feel heavy? Why does my patience feel thin? Why do I feel like I am carrying a life that no longer fits inside my spirit?" And because you are used to blaming yourself first, you almost missed the fourth knock. You thought exhaustion meant you were becoming weak. But what if exhaustion was revealing where you had been carrying what God never assigned? What if your tiredness was not the collapse of your calling? What if it was the collapse of the false self that kept trying to carry your calling in the wrong way? There is a kind of tiredness that comes from faithful work. That tiredness can be restored by rest. But there is another kind of tiredness that comes from living divided. Living one way on the outside while something inside keeps saying, "This is not sustainable." Saying yes with your mouth while your spirit is grieving. Carrying burdens to keep peace. Managing emotions that are not yours. Staying available to chaos because you are afraid of what people will think if you become harder to reach. Performing the version of yourself everyone trusts, while the real you is somewhere underneath, asking when it will finally be allowed to breathe. That kind of exhaustion is not just physical. It is spiritual pressure. It is emotional misalignment. It is the weight of a life built around survival instead of obedience. And when God loves a chosen one, He will not always give them more strength to keep carrying what is destroying them. Sometimes, He gives them the mercy of not being able to carry it anymore. That is the fourth knock. Not a loud command. Not a dramatic sign. A holy inability to keep pretending. A sacred tiredness that says something has to change. A quiet collapse of the role you were never meant to live inside forever. And I know that word collapse may sound frightening, but not every collapse is destruction. Sometimes collapse is the moment the false structure finally stops hiding the true foundation. Sometimes what breaks is not you. Sometimes what breaks is the version of you that was built to survive environments God is now leading you out of. Sometimes what falls apart is not your future. Sometimes what falls apart is the coping system that kept you from entering it clean. You thought you were losing yourself. But what if you were losing the mask? You thought you were becoming less capable. But what if you were becoming less willing to abandon your soul for approval? You thought you were failing at life. But what if you were finally refusing to keep living under assignments that were never given by God? This is where the fourth knock becomes serious. Because exhaustion asks a question that comfort would never ask. What are you carrying that grace is not carrying with you? That question matters. Because God gives strength for assignment. He gives grace for obedience. He gives endurance for what He has called you to carry. But many chosen ones are exhausted because they are not only carrying their assignment, they are carrying fear, they are carrying guilt, they are carrying people's expectations, they are carrying family patterns, they are carrying old vows they made in pain, they are carrying the need to be understood, they are carrying the need to rescue everyone, they are carrying the need to prove they are good, they are carrying the need to never disappoint anyone. They are carrying the belief that if they stop, everything will fall apart. But chosen one, if everything falls apart when you stop playing God, then maybe it was never resting on God to begin with. And I do not say that to shame you. I say it to free you. Because some of the weight you call responsibility is actually control wearing holy clothes. Some of the weight you call loyalty is actually fear of being rejected. Some of the weight you call love is actually the old wound of needing to be needed. Some of the weight you call patience is actually avoidance of honest conversation. Some of the weight you call humility is actually self-erasure. And exhaustion came to tell the truth. It came to say, this is too heavy because it is not yours. It came to say, this role is too small because God is forming something larger. It came to say, this pattern is too costly because it is spending energy meant for obedience. It came to say, this performance is no longer sustainable because the real you is being summoned. This is why your exhaustion may have felt different. Not just sleepy, not just busy, not just needing a break. It felt like your spirit was tired of pretending, tired of explaining, tired of absorbing, tired of hoping people would notice what you never said, tired of being the mature one, tired of being the safe one, tired of being the one who understands everyone while no one studies what you carry, tired of shrinking your needs so other people could keep feeling comfortable around you, tired of smiling with a soul that felt miles away from your face. And when that kind of tiredness rises, you can either shame yourself for it or you can ask what it is revealing. Because exhaustion is often a messenger before it becomes a breakdown. It whispers before it screams. It shows you the heaviness before the heaviness takes over. It warns you that the pace, the pressure, the pattern, or the performance cannot continue. And many chosen ones ignore the whisper because they have been praised for ignoring themselves. They were called strong when they stayed silent. They were called faithful when they tolerated too much. They were called loving when they gave without limits. They were called easy to be around when they had no boundaries. They were called mature when they did not ask for help. They were called spiritual when they kept forgiving without ever healing. They were called humble when they made themselves small. So the body became the witness. The body started telling the truth. The mouth was afraid to speak. The body said, I am tired. The spirit said, I am divided. The heart said, I am carrying grief I never named. The mind said, I cannot keep rehearsing these same fears. The soul said, I was made for more than being useful. And God heard all of it. Not the polished prayer, not the perfect language, not the public strength. He heard the deeper cry, the cry underneath the functioning, the cry underneath the productivity, the cry underneath the smile, the cry underneath, I am fine. And I believe there are moments when the Father looks at a chosen one who is still trying to carry everything and says, "I will not let this false strength destroy the person I called." So he interrupts. He lets the energy run out for the wrong thing. He lets the old performance become too heavy. He lets the old role become unbearable. He lets the old way of pleasing people stop working. He lets the old coping system lose its power. He lets you become tired enough to finally ask, "Why am I carrying this?" Not because he wants you broken, because he wants you honest. And honesty is the doorway to freedom. You cannot surrender a burden you keep calling normal. You cannot release a role you keep calling identity. You cannot heal from a pattern you keep calling personality. You cannot leave a prison you keep decorating as responsibility. So God allowed exhaustion to reveal what you had normalized. And this is where you must be gentle with yourself, because when you first realize how much you have been carrying, grief may rise. You may grieve the years you spent overextending. You may grieve the way people accepted your sacrifice, as if it cost you nothing. You may grieve the version of you who believed love had to be earned through depletion. You may grieve the moments you needed care, but still became the caretaker. You may grieve the silence you kept because you thought peace depended on your disappearance. Let that grief be honest, but do not let it become shame. You did what you knew how to do with the tools you had at the time. You survived in the ways survival taught you. You became strong because life required strength before you understood rest. You became helpful because being needed felt safer than being known. You became quiet because speaking truth once cost you too much. You became careful because disappointment trained you to expect loss. But now, God is not only calling the survivor, He is calling the son. He is calling the daughter. He is calling the one who does not have to earn a place in the Father's heart by carrying what He never assigned. And that is why exhaustion can become holy. It brings you to the end of false earning. It brings you to the end of performing worth. It brings you to the end of confusing depletion with devotion. It brings you to the place where you finally say, "God, I cannot keep doing this the old way." And sometimes that sentence is not failure. Sometimes it is the first true prayer you have prayed in a long time. Not the decorated prayer, not the impressive prayer, not the prayer designed to sound strong. The real one. God, I cannot keep doing this the old way. There is power in that honesty, because grace does not meet the mask. Grace meets the truth. And when you stop pretending you are fine, the Father does not step back in disgust. He steps closer in mercy. There is a tenderness in Scripture around exhaustion that many people forget. Peter was bold. Peter was loud. Peter believed he knew himself. He thought his devotion was stronger than pressure. He thought he could stand when the moment came. But when fear pressed him, something broke. He denied what he thought he would defend. And after that, he had to face the collapse of the version of himself he believed was unshakable. That kind of collapse is painful. When the image you had of yourself falls. When you realize you are not as strong as you thought. When you realize your courage has limits. When you realize your promises were sincere, but your foundation was not ready. But Jesus did not end Peter's story at the collapse. He restored him, not by pretending the failure did not happen, not by shaming him into usefulness, but by bringing him back through love. Do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Peter's collapse was not the death of his calling. It was the death of his illusion. And sometimes that is what exhaustion does for a chosen one. It kills the illusion that you can carry everything. It kills the illusion that your strength is limitless. It kills the illusion that being needed is the same as being called. It kills the illusion that you can neglect your soul and still carry sacred responsibility cleanly. It kills the illusion that old methods can carry new assignments. And when the illusion dies, the real calling can be restored on a truer foundation. This is why you must not despise the exhaustion that brought you to honesty. It may have felt like weakness, but it may have been the moment God stopped you from building the next season on a counterfeit version of strength. Because there is a strength that comes from fear, and there is a strength that comes from grace. Fear strength says, I have to hold everything together. Grace strength says, God is holding what He assigned me to carry. Fear strength says, I cannot disappoint anyone. Grace strength says, I must obey God more than the expectations of people. Fear strength says, if I rest, I will fall behind. Grace strength says, rest is not abandonment when God is the builder. Fear strength says, I am only valuable when I am useful. Grace strength says, I am loved before I produce. Fear strength says, keep going until you break. Grace strength says, come to the Father before the burden becomes your identity. The fourth knock is the place where fear strength begins to fail, and that failure can be mercy, because fear strength may look impressive, but it is not sustainable. It can build something quickly and destroy the person building it. It can keep peace externally while creating war internally. It can make you admired by people who do not know how far away you feel from yourself. It can make you dependable but disconnected. It can make you productive but prayerless. It can make you needed but not nourished. And God is not impressed by a version of strength that separates you from Him. He does not need you to become a machine. He does not need you to bleed quietly to prove you are faithful. He does not need you to carry what He never commanded. He does not need your burnout as an offering. He wants your obedience. And obedience is often lighter than the burdens fear creates. Not always easy, but cleaner. Not always painless, but less divided. Not always simple, but covered by grace. This is why you must begin sorting the weight. Not with a pen, not with a dramatic announcement, just inwardly with God. Picture the burdens you carry as stones in a field inside your mind. Some stones have names: family expectations, old guilt, financial fear, the need to explain, the need to rescue, the need to prove, the need to be liked, the fear of being misunderstood, the responsibility for someone else's emotions, the pressure to become successful quickly, the shame of not being where you thought you would be, the memory of who left, the promise you are still waiting on. Now imagine that each stone has to pass through the hands of the Father before it can remain in your arms. Not every stone is thrown away. Some are assignments. Some are responsibilities. Some are holy commitments. Some are part of love, but some were never yours. Some were handed to you by fear. Some were placed on you by people who wanted access without accountability. Some were inherited from a family system that taught you to carry quietly. Some came from wounds that told you, if you are not useful, you will not be chosen. Now ask inwardly, Father, which of these stones did you actually give me? And let that question become light, not because every answer will appear instantly, but because the question itself begins to break the spell. You are no longer calling every burden holy. You are no longer calling every demand assignment. You are no longer calling every expectation obedience. You are bringing the weight before God. And that is where freedom begins. Because a chosen one must learn the difference between compassion and carrying. You can care about someone without carrying what only God can heal in them. You can love someone without becoming responsible for their obedience. You can forgive someone without reopening the same access point. You can support someone without becoming their savior. You can be present without being consumed. You can be kind without being controlled. You can be generous without being emptied. You can be spiritual without ignoring your limits. These distinctions matter because without them, your gift becomes a trap. The gift of empathy becomes emotional absorption. The gift of discernment becomes hypervigilance. The gift of service becomes self-neglect. The gift of peace becomes avoidance. The gift of endurance becomes tolerance for what God is asking you to release. The gift of love becomes fear of boundaries. And the enemy loves to twist gifts into chains. He does not always attack the chosen one by making them evil. Sometimes he attacks them by making them overextended, too tired to pray clearly, too scattered to discern, too guilty to say no, too busy helping everyone else to hear their own instruction. too burdened to notice the door God is opening, too exhausted to answer the fifth knock. That is why this fourth knock is not small. It is not just about rest. At first, you may think that is the answer. I just need rest. I just need a break. I just need a few quiet days. I just need people to stop needing me for a moment. And yes, rest matters. Your body matters. Your nervous system matters. Your sleep matters. Your quiet matters. God cares about the physical vessel that carries your assignment. But the deeper issue is not only that you need rest. The deeper issue is that you need release. Because if you rest but return to the same false burdens, exhaustion will come back wearing a different face. If you sleep but continue saying yes from fear, the heaviness will return. If you take a break but keep carrying guilt as identity, the pressure will rebuild. If you get distance but never surrender control, your mind will keep working even when your body stops. If you receive a quiet moment but never change the agreements that created the chaos, the same cycle will find you again. So yes, rest. But do not stop at rest. Ask what the exhaustion exposed. Ask what burden kept returning. Ask what role you keep performing. Ask what yes keeps costing you peace. Ask what no you keep delaying. Ask what emotion you have been managing for someone else. Ask what responsibility you accepted because you were afraid of being called selfish. Ask what version of you God is no longer giving strength to perform. That is the deeper revelation. God may not be refusing to strengthen you. He may be refusing to strengthen the false self. The false self that needs to be needed. The false self that confuses control with care. The false self that stays busy to avoid grief. The false self that measures worth by usefulness. The false self that believes love must always be proven through access. The false self that says, if I do not hold everything together, I will lose everything. God is not cruel for letting that version grow tired. He is merciful, because if he kept empowering the false self, you might call it blessing while slowly disappearing. And the Father is not interested in blessing a mask while the real child remains hidden underneath it. He wants the real you, the honest you, the surrendered you, the restored you, the you that can serve from overflow instead of emptiness, the you that can love without self-erasure, the you that can carry responsibility without becoming a replacement for God, the you that can enter the next season with clean hands and an undivided spirit. That is who he is calling. That is why he knocked through exhaustion. And perhaps this is why certain things began to feel impossible. Not because you suddenly lost all strength, but because grace was lifting from the old pattern. You could still do what was assigned, but you could no longer carry what was counterfeit without feeling the cost. You could still love, but you could no longer confuse love with emotional slavery. You could still be present, but you could no longer be endlessly available to chaos. You could still forgive, but you could no longer pretend forgiveness meant giving unsafe patterns the same access. You could still serve, but you could no longer serve from resentment and call it humility. This is spiritual maturity. When grace begins to separate what is yours from what is not yours, when your spirit begins to feel the difference between assignment and pressure, when your peace becomes too valuable to trade for approval, when your obedience becomes more important than being misunderstood, when your energy becomes something you steward, not something everyone is allowed to spend. And this is not selfish. It is sacred, because your attention is sacred ground. Your peace is sacred ground. Your calling is sacred ground. Your inner life is sacred ground. The place where God speaks to you is sacred ground. And if you let every demand walk through that place without discernment, do not be surprised when your spirit feels trampled. The fourth knock came to help you guard the ground, not with fear, not with arrogance, not with isolation, with wisdom, because the next season will require a guarded heart, not a hard heart, a guarded heart. A hard heart refuses love. A guarded heart protects what God is growing. A hard heart punishes everyone for what someone did. A guarded heart discerns who has access. A hard heart cannot receive. A guarded heart receives with wisdom. A hard heart says, I need no one. A guarded heart says, I need God to show me who is assigned to this season. That is the difference. And the exhaustion has been teaching you that difference. It has been showing you that open access is not the same as love. It has been showing you that carrying everyone is not the same as serving God. It has been showing you that being tired all the time is not a badge of honor. It has been showing you that you cannot keep pouring from a place God is trying to heal. It has been showing you that the next version of you cannot be built on the same depletion. Chosen one, this is not the end of your strength. This is the purification of your strength. The strength that was tied to fear is being removed. The strength that was tied to approval is being removed. The strength that was tied to performance is being removed. The strength that was tied to control is being removed. The strength that was tied to survival is being healed. And in its place, God is forming a quieter strength, a cleaner strength, a strength that does not need to be loud, a strength that does not need to be praised, a strength that knows when to speak and when to be silent, a strength that knows when to carry and when to release, a strength that knows when to stay and when to step back, a strength that knows the difference between sacrifice and self-destruction. That kind of strength is not born in constant noise. It is born when exhaustion brings you back to truth. And if you feel this part deeply, it may be because you have been more tired than you admitted. Not just physically, spiritually tired, emotionally tired, tired of trying to understand everything, tired of forgiving things you never had space to process, tired of being patient with patterns that never change, tired of waiting for people to see what they keep refusing to see, tired of carrying hope for rooms that keep choosing dysfunction, tired of being expected to heal quietly, tired of being strong enough for everyone else and still feeling unseen in your own pain. God sees that. He sees the tiredness you minimize. He sees the tears you swallow. He sees the resentment you feel guilty for having. He sees the way you keep functioning while something inside keeps asking for rescue. He sees the part of you that wants to be faithful but does not know how to keep going without losing yourself. And I believe the Father is not saying, push harder. He is saying, come closer. Not closer to more pressure, closer to truth, closer to surrender, closer to the place where you stop performing and let Him meet the real weight. And if you could hear the heart of the Father over this part of your life, it would not sound like accusation. It would sound like mercy. My child, I did not let you become tired because I abandoned you. I let the false weight become heavy so you would finally stop calling it yours. I did not bring you this far to watch you disappear under burdens I never assigned. I am not asking you to carry what only I can carry. Come back to me. Come back to what is clean. Come back to what is true. Come back to the part of you that knows my voice beneath the pressure. That is the mercy inside the fourth knock. It is a call back. Back from false responsibility. Back from emotional overextension. Back from the need to prove. Back from the fear of disappointing people. Back from the habit of carrying what drains your spirit. Back from the old identity that only felt safe when it was needed. And maybe this is the hardest part, because releasing false burdens does not always feel peaceful at first. Sometimes it feels wrong. Sometimes it feels like guilt. Sometimes it feels like you are betraying people. Sometimes it feels like you are becoming someone you do not recognize. Sometimes it feels like silence after years of noise, and silence can feel strange before it feels safe. But remember what we learned from the first knock. Silence is not always absence. Sometimes it is the room where God begins again. And when you release a false burden, the first thing you may feel is not joy. It may be emptiness, because that burden had become part of your identity. You may wonder, who am I if I am not always needed? Who am I if I am not the one fixing everything? Who am I if I stop being available to chaos? Who am I if I let people be responsible for what belongs to them. Who am I if I no longer earn love through exhaustion? That question can feel frightening, but it is also holy, because now God can answer it. You are my child before you are anyone's solution. You are chosen before you are useful. You are loved before you are productive. You are called before you are understood. You are mine before you are needed. That truth is the beginning of freedom, because if your worth begins in the Father, you do not have to keep renting it from people's approval. If your identity begins in His voice, you do not have to keep shaping yourself around everyone else's expectations. If your calling begins in obedience, you do not have to say yes to every emotional demand that sounds urgent. If your strength begins in grace, you do not have to keep pretending depletion is devotion. This is how the fourth knock becomes a doorway. Not a doorway into quitting, a doorway into clean surrender. And clean surrender is not passive. It is powerful. It says, I will carry what God assigns. It says, I will release what fear assigned. It says, I will love without becoming a savior. It says, I will serve without disappearing. It says, I will rest without shame. It says, I will disappoint the wrong expectations if obedience requires it. It says, I will not sacrifice my spiritual clarity to maintain a false peace. It says, I will let God be God in the places where I have tried to be everything. That is not weakness. That is worship. Because sometimes the most sacred thing you can do is stop carrying the weight that belongs to God. And this is where I want you to do something inwardly. Again, you do not need to move. You do not need to write. You do not need to change where you are. Just picture your soul standing before the Father with both hands full. In one hand, you are holding the burdens God actually assigned, the responsibilities that are clean, the relationships that are healthy, the duties that come with peace underneath them, even when they require effort, the work that stretches you but does not erase you, the love that calls you higher without consuming you. In the other hand, you are holding the burdens fear assigned, the guilt, the pressure, the need to fix, the need to prove, the need to explain, the need to be approved, the need to prevent everyone from feeling pain, the need to keep old patterns alive because you are afraid of what will happen if you stop. Now ask quietly within yourself, Father, show me what is yours and show me what fear placed in my hands. Let that question separate the weight, not instantly, not forcefully, but truthfully, and imagine the burdens that are not yours beginning to lose their grip. Not because you hate anyone, not because you are quitting your life, not because you are becoming careless, but because you are allowing God to be the source, the healer, the judge, the provider, the defender, and the savior. You were never meant to be all of that. You were never meant to hold the whole world together. You were never meant to keep everyone emotionally safe by becoming spiritually exhausted. You were never meant to carry the weight of being misunderstood forever. You were never meant to prove your love by abandoning your limits. You were never meant to be crushed under what only God can carry. Let that truth move through you. The burden that is not mine can return to God. The burden that is not mine can return to God. The burden that is not mine can return to God. And if that sentence speaks to you, you can place a simple witness below. I release the false burden, not as a dramatic announcement, as agreement, as a marker, as a way of telling your spirit, I am no longer calling every weight holy. I release the false burden. That does not mean everything changes overnight. It means your agreement changes. And when your agreement changes, your obedience begins to change. You begin noticing before you automatically say yes. You begin pausing before you carry someone else's emotion. You begin asking God before you rescue. You begin choosing peace before performance. You begin letting people experience consequences you used to absorb for them. You begin allowing silence instead of rushing to explain. You begin letting the Father defend what you used to exhaust yourself trying to prove. That is freedom, quiet freedom, mature freedom, freedom that may not look dramatic from the outside, but inside your spirit chains begin falling silently. And this is where the enemy will try to accuse you. He will say, "You are selfish." He will say, "You are cold." He will say, "You are not who you used to be." He will say, "People will leave." He will say, "You are failing them." He will say, "You are not spiritual enough." He will say, "If you really loved them, you would keep carrying it." But you must learn to answer accusation with truth. I can love without carrying what God did not assign. I can care without controlling. I can forgive without reopening the wound. I can serve without disappearing. I can rest without shame. I can obey God even when guilt is loud. I can disappoint a false expectation and still walk in love. I can release the false burden. This is how the fourth knock matures you. It teaches you that not every accusation deserves your agreement. Not every guilty feeling deserves your obedience. Not every urgent demand deserves your energy. Not every emotional reaction deserves access to your peace. Not every burden belongs in your hands. And when you learn that, you stop living as if your value depends on how much you can survive. You begin living as someone who has been entrusted with a calling that must be stewarded. A steward does not let everyone spend what God gave them. A steward does not treat sacred oil as if it is common. A steward does not pour endlessly into broken containers that refuse to be healed. A steward asks, "Father, where does this belong? Where does my energy belong? Where does my attention belong? Where does my yes belong? Where does my no belong? Where does my compassion belong? Where does my silence belong? Where does my obedience belong?" That is stewardship. And this is what exhaustion has been trying to teach you. Your life is not a public resource for every demand. Your spirit is not an open field for every voice. Your peace is not a payment you owe to everyone who dislikes your growth. Your calling is not a decoration for people to admire while you die inside. Your attention is not cheap. Your yes is not cheap. Your no is not rebellion. Your rest is not failure. Your boundaries are not hatred. Your humanity is not a weakness God is ashamed of. The fourth knock is God bringing you back to your humanity so He can restore your holiness without performance. Because some of you have been trying to be spiritual by denying you are human. But Jesus did not deny human limits. He withdrew. He rested. He wept. He slept in a storm. He left crowds. He said no. He did not heal every person in every place at every moment. He obeyed the Father, not every demand around Him. And if the Son of God did not let human need control every movement of His life, why have you believed that love requires you to be endlessly available? That question is not meant to condemn you. It is meant to free you. Because Christ-like love is not the same as boundaryless exhaustion. Christ-like love is obedient love. It moves from the Father's will, not from the fear of being disliked. It serves deeply, but it does not perform for approval. It gives fully, but it does not lose itself in false assignment. It sacrifices when God calls, but it does not bleed for every expectation people create. And if you are going to walk into the next season, you must learn that difference. Because the fifth knock will not be answered by the exhausted false self. The fifth knock will be answered by the restored self, the honest self, the surrendered self, the self that has stopped trying to be everything, the self that can hear because the noise has been quieted, the self that can discern because discomfort has been honored, the self that can trust because delay has been reinterpreted, the self that can respond because exhaustion has exposed the false weight. Do you see how the four knocks are connected now? Silence cleared the noise. Discomfort revealed the misalignment. Delay formed the capacity. Exhaustion exposed the false burden. One cleared, one revealed, one formed, one exposed, and now the fifth knock can finally be heard for what it is. Not another random sign, not another passing feeling, not another moment to dismiss, not another message to almost leave. The fifth knock is the response moment. But before we step into that, you must understand one more thing about exhaustion. Exhaustion can become a doorway or it can become an identity. If you let exhaustion become your identity, you will start saying, "This is just who I am now. I am always tired. I am always overwhelmed. I am always behind. I am always carrying too much. I am always the one who has to be strong. I am always the one no one sees." And slowly tiredness becomes the name you answer to. But God did not knock through exhaustion so exhaustion could name you. He knocked through exhaustion so truth could interrupt what was draining you. You are not the exhausted one. You are the one being called back from false weight. You are not the overwhelmed one. You are the one learning to separate assignment from pressure. You are not the forgotten one. You are the one God loved enough to stop. You are not the broken one. You are the one being restored to clean strength. Do not let a season name you. Let God name you. The season may say, tired. God says, called. The season may say, delayed. God says, prepared. The season may say, uncomfortable. God says, discerning. The season may say, quiet. God says, listening. The season may say, finished. God says, not this time. And that phrase is where everything begins to turn. Not this time. Not this time will you ignore the silence. Not this time will you dismiss the discomfort. Not this time will you call delay rejection. Not this time will you call exhaustion failure. Not this time will you carry what is not yours until your spirit disappears. Not this time will you walk away right before clarity. Not this time will distraction steal the moment God prepared for your awakening. Because the first 4 knocks were not the end. They were preparation for the 5th. And the 5th is different. The 5th is not just God trying to get your attention. The 5th is God showing you that your attention itself must be restored. Because what good is a sign if your mind is too scattered to recognize it? What good is a word if your spirit is too crowded to receive it? What good is a door if exhaustion has trained you to walk past it? What good is a calling if the false burdens have made you too tired to respond? This is why the next part matters so deeply, because we are not only going to talk about God reaching you, we are going to talk about why you kept almost missing Him. We are going to talk about the battle over your attention. We are going to talk about the difference between a passing feeling and a true divine interruption. We are going to talk about how the 5th knock asks for a response, not just recognition. And we are going to connect something many people never consider. That the state of your attention, the state of your mind, the state of your inner world can affect how clearly you receive what God has been trying to show you. Because modern life has trained many chosen ones to live in fragments. A prayer interrupted by a worry. A conviction buried under noise. A sign dismissed by mental fog. A sacred moment swallowed by distraction. A quiet pull covered by exhaustion. But God is not only restoring your faith, He is restoring your ability to be present enough to answer. That is why He said, not this time. Not because He is angry, because He is merciful. Not because He is forcing you, because He is interrupting the pattern that kept stealing you from yourself. The 4th knock was exhaustion. It showed you what you could no longer carry. It revealed the false burden. It brought the old performance to the end of its strength. And now, after silence, discomfort, delay, and exhaustion, the 5th knock stands before you. This is the moment where God is no longer only showing you what happened. He is asking what you will do with what you now recognize. And that is where the final part begins. Because the final part does not begin with more information. It begins with response. You have already seen the pattern. The first knock came through silence. The second knock came through discomfort. The third knock came through delay. The 4th knock came through exhaustion. And now the 5th knock is here. Not hidden in a season. Not buried inside a feeling you could easily dismiss. Not disguised as something you can keep explaining away. This time, the knock is recognition. This time, you are not only feeling something, you are seeing the pattern. And once God lets you see the pattern, you cannot go back to calling it random. That is why this moment matters. Because the first 4 times, you could say, maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I was just overthinking. Maybe everyone feels this way. Maybe the silence was empty. Maybe the discomfort was stress. Maybe the delay was rejection. Maybe the exhaustion was weakness. But now, all 4 are standing together. And together, they are saying the same thing. God has been trying to reach you. Not to scare you. Not to shame you. Not to force you into panic. But to bring you back to attention. To bring you back to alignment. To bring you back to the place where your spirit can finally say, I see it now. And that is what makes the 5th knock different. The 5th knock is not just another sign. The 5th knock is the moment when the signs begin to make sense. The 5th knock is not just God repeating himself. It is God revealing why he had to repeat himself. The 5th knock is not just an invitation to listen. It is an invitation to respond. And response is where many chosen ones struggle, because recognition can feel safe. Recognition lets you say, yes, that is true. Recognition lets you feel seen. Recognition lets you understand your pain. Recognition lets you connect the dots. But response asks for obedience. Response asks, now that you know, what will change? Response asks, now that you see the pattern, will you still live as if you do not? Response asks, now that you know silence was speaking, will you keep filling it with noise? Response asks, now that you know discomfort was discernment, will you keep calling it stress? Response asks, now that you know delay was preparation, will you keep calling it rejection? Response asks, now that you know exhaustion, exposed false burdens, will you keep carrying what God never assigned? That is the 5th knock. It is the place where awareness becomes accountability, not condemnation. Accountability, not pressure. Responsibility, not fear. Maturity, because God does not reveal a pattern just to satisfy your curiosity. He reveals a pattern to free you from repeating it. And this pattern has followed you longer than you may want to admit. You walk away right before clarity. You distract yourself right before conviction. You doubt right before obedience. You overthink right before surrender. You get tired right before breakthrough. You call it too much right when God is touching the place that needs healing. You say, I will come back later, when your spirit knows later has become the hiding place of fear. And still, God kept reaching. That is grace. But grace is not only God coming again. Grace is also God giving you the strength to stop running when he comes. Grace is not only another chance. Grace is power to respond differently. And I believe that is what this 5th knock is carrying. Power to respond differently. Not perfectly, differently. You do not have to fix your whole life in one moment. You do not have to understand every detail. You do not have to make a dramatic promise. You do not have to perform a spiritual version of yourself to prove that you heard. You only have to become honest enough to say, God, I recognize the knock now. That is where the turning begins. Because one honest response can interrupt a pattern that has been repeating for years. One honest yes can break the agreement you made with avoidance. One honest moment of attention can become the doorway into a different kind of life. Not because everything changes instantly, but because something in you stops collaborating with the old escape. That is the sacred weight of this moment. God is not simply saying, listen to this. He is saying, stop leaving the place where I am trying to meet you. Stop disappearing into noise every time I bring you close to truth. Stop calling your fear wisdom. Stop calling your numbness peace. Stop calling your exhaustion normal. Stop calling your waiting rejection. Stop calling your discomfort instability. Stop calling your distraction harmless when it keeps stealing your ability to hear. Because the enemy does not need to make you evil if he can make you unavailable. Unavailable to silence. Unavailable to conviction. Unavailable to discernment. Unavailable to preparation. Unavailable to rest. Unavailable to the very moment where God is trying to restore you. And this is why the battle over your attention is so serious. Whatever holds your attention long enough begins to shape your inner world. If fear holds it, fear becomes the narrator. If comparison holds it, comparison becomes the measure. If guilt holds it, guilt becomes the master. If noise holds it, noise becomes the atmosphere. If old wounds hold it, old wounds become the lens. But if God holds your attention, even for a sincere moment, clarity begins to return. Peace begins to return. Discernment begins to return. Truth begins to return. Your real self begins to return. This is why the fifth knock is not only about hearing God. It is about recovering the part of you that can pay attention long enough to receive Him. Because some of you are not faithless. You are fragmented. Your heart wants God, but your mind is pulled in 100 directions. Your spirit senses something, but your emotions are carrying old alarms. Your body is tired, your thoughts are crowded, your attention is scattered, and then you wonder why sacred moments feel blurry. Chosen one, hear this with compassion. God is not angry at your fog. He is healing your fragmentation. He is gathering the scattered pieces of your attention. He is calling back the part of you that has been trained to live in constant interruption. He is restoring your ability to be present, because presence is where response begins. You cannot respond to a knock you refuse to be present enough to hear. You cannot open a door you keep walking away from. You cannot obey a calling that you keep burying under mental noise. So the fifth knock says, come back. Come back from the noise. Come back from the fear. Come back from the false burden. Come back from the comparison. Come back from the old agreement that says you are only safe when you are distracted. Come back from the version of yourself that almost left every time God came close. Come back, not with shame, with attention, not with panic, with surrender, not with pressure, with honesty. And there is an ancient posture that carries this kind of response. It is the posture of saying, here I am. Not, I understand everything. Not, I feel ready for everything. Not, I know exactly what comes next. Not, I am never afraid. Just, here I am. In the language of Scripture, that kind of response carries deep weight. When someone says, here I am, they are not merely announcing location. They are offering availability. They are saying, I am present. I am listening. I am not hiding. I am not running. I am not pretending I did not hear. I may be trembling, but I am here. I may not have all the answers, but I am here. I may still need healing, but I am here. I may not know the full path, but I am here. That is the response of a chosen one who has stopped needing perfect clarity before giving God honest attention. And maybe that is your response right now. Not a dramatic vow, not a performance, just a quiet inner sentence. Here I am. That sentence may be more powerful than the long prayers you forced yourself to say while distracted. Because God is not looking for theatrical language. He is looking for surrendered presence. Here I am, in the silence I used to avoid. Here I am, in the discomfort I used to dismiss. Here I am, in the delay I used to resent. Here I am, in the exhaustion I used to shame. Here I am, at the fifth knock. I am not walking away this time. That is the shift. That is the moment the old pattern begins to lose authority. Because when you stop running, the thing that chased you no longer has to chase. When you stop hiding, the truth no longer has to come through disguises. When you stop numbing, conviction can become gentle again. When you stop calling every invitation pressure, you can finally feel the tenderness inside God's correction. And let me say this clearly. The fifth knock is not God threatening you. It is God rescuing you from the version of you that keeps postponing your own awakening. It is not a punishment. It is mercy with timing. It is not, if you miss this, God will abandon you. No, it is, do not keep abandoning the places where God is meeting you. There is a difference. God is faithful, but faithfulness should not become an excuse to stay asleep. Grace is patient, but patience should not become a reason to keep ignoring the pattern. Mercy comes again, But mercy also teaches you how to finally answer. So now the question becomes simple, but not easy. What does response look like? Not someday, not in the vague future, not when everything is perfect. What does response look like now? For some of you, response looks like protecting one quiet moment every day where noise does not get the first word. For some of you, response looks like finally admitting that a certain discomfort is telling the truth. For some of you, response looks like refusing to call preparation rejection. For some of you, response looks like releasing a burden that fear placed in your hands. For some of you, response looks like asking God one honest question instead of asking 10 anxious ones. For some of you, response looks like not going back to the thing that makes your spirit heavy. For some of you, response looks like resting without shame. For some of you, response looks like choosing one small act of obedience before your mind talks you out of it. And that is where the 3-breath obedience rule becomes useful. You do not need to move. You do not need to write anything. You do not need to close your eyes. You do not need to make your environment perfect. This is an inner action. The next time you feel that sacred pull, the next time conviction rises, the next time you are about to distract yourself from what God may be showing you, take 3 honest breaths inside the moment. On the first breath, refuse the automatic escape. Just inwardly say, I do not have to run from this. On the second breath, name what is being highlighted. Not perfectly, just honestly. This is about my attention. This is about that boundary. This is about that decision. This is about that burden. This is about that fear. This is about the thing I keep delaying. On the third breath, choose one clean response. Not a huge response. Not an impressive response. A clean one. A prayer instead of a panic spiral. A pause instead of an immediate yes. A no instead of a false peace. A moment of silence instead of another distraction. A release instead of another attempt to control. A small act of obedience instead of another promise to deal with it later. That is how the 5th knock becomes practical, because many people hear truth and then wait for a dramatic feeling before they obey. But often, obedience begins with one clean response. The clean response is not always emotional. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is simple. Sometimes it looks unimpressive. But heaven sees it. Heaven sees when you pause before repeating the old pattern. Heaven sees when you tell the truth inside yourself. Heaven sees when you choose peace over performance. Heaven sees when you release what fear taught you to carry. Heaven sees when you protect your attention like sacred ground. Heaven sees when you stop walking away from the place where God is meeting you. And as you practice this, you will need discernment. Because not every intense feeling is God. Not every repeated thought is divine instruction. Not every open door is assignment. Not every closed door is rejection. Not every discomfort means leave. Not every delay means wait forever. Not every exhaustion means quit. This is why you need the discernment filter. Again, this is internal. You can use it while lying down, sitting quietly, walking through your day, or even moving through responsibilities. When something keeps pulling at your spirit, ask yourself 5 questions. Does this call me higher without crushing me with shame? Does it produce clarity, even if it challenges me? Does it align with wisdom, character, and truth? Does it keep returning in different forms after the noise fades? Does it invite obedience instead of panic? If it only produces chaos, pause. If it flatters your ego but does not form your character, pause. If it makes you cruel, superior, or reckless, pause. If it demands urgency but leaves no peace, pause. If it asks you to abandon wisdom, pause. Because the voice of God can convict deeply, but it does not need to create confusion to be powerful. It can correct you and still carry love. It can interrupt you and still carry peace. It can expose the pattern and still protect your dignity. It can call you higher without making you hate yourself. That is how you begin to recognize the difference between divine interruption and emotional noise. And this matters because the fifth knock will not always come with drama. Sometimes it will come as a quiet knowing, a clean conviction, a repeated nudge, a door that keeps appearing, a sentence that keeps returning, a peace that does not make sense, a discomfort that will not leave until you tell the truth, a delay that forms you instead of destroying you, an exhaustion that finally makes you release what was never yours. You must become someone who can discern the small holy thing before it becomes a loud consequence. That is maturity. And now we need to speak about something many chosen ones rarely connect to their spiritual life. Your attention is not only spiritual, it is also affected by the state of your mind, your brain, your inner rhythm, your ability to focus, your ability to enter stillness, your ability to receive without constant mental interruption, because you can love God deeply and still struggle to stay present. You can have a calling and still feel mentally foggy. You can sense divine patterns and still feel like your mind is scattered into pieces. You can pray and still feel like your thoughts keep crashing into one another. You can want obedience and still feel like your inner world is too noisy to hold the instruction. And this is not always because you lack faith. Sometimes your system has been trained into survival. Modern life trains people to jump from one thought to the next, one fear to the next, one distraction to the next, one unfinished emotion to the next. And over time, the mind starts living like a radio stuck between stations. A little clarity, then static, a little conviction, then noise, a little peace, then panic, a little hope, then mental fog. And if you are a chosen one, this can feel even more painful, because you remember somewhere inside you that you were created for deeper clarity than this. You remember being more sensitive, more intuitive, more alive, more able to sense timing, more able to feel meaning, more able to recognize the small signals that other people ignored. Maybe when you were younger, before the world trained you to doubt everything, something in you felt open. You learned quickly. You sensed deeply. You noticed patterns. You had flashes of knowing. You felt connected to something greater. Then life happened. Stress happened. Disappointment happened. Noise happened. Systems happened. Pressure happened. And little by little, that inner brightness felt dimmed. Not gone, dimmed. And for many people, that dimming becomes normal. They say, "This is just adulthood. This is just stress. This is just how life feels now." But what if part of your journey is not only spiritual awakening, but the recovery of the clarity that was buried under years of mental noise? This is where a practical tool may support some of you, and I want to speak about it carefully, because no tool replaces God. No audio replaces obedience. No practice replaces prayer. No product is a magic button. And nothing outside of you can do the sacred work that requires your honest yes. But sometimes, God allows tools to meet people at the exact place where their struggle is happening. And if your struggle has been mental fog, scattered attention, difficulty focusing, and the feeling that your inner signal is buried under static, there is something I want you to be aware of. It is called the Genius Song. It is a 7-minute digital audio track designed to be listened to with headphones. The idea behind it is brain entrainment, using sound to help guide the brain toward a gamma wave state. Gamma is often associated with heightened focus, learning, insight, and moments where the mind seems to connect things quickly. Some people call it a super brainwave. And in the way I see it, this is not about replacing the spiritual journey. It is about supporting the vessel that has to walk that journey. Because if your mind has been trained into survival and fragmentation for years, a tool that helps support focus and inner clarity can become a meaningful part of your daily rhythm. Again, this is not a guarantee of a perfect life. It is not a substitute for prayer. It is not a replacement for rest, wisdom, counseling, repentance, obedience, or real-life decisions. but it may help some of you create a clearer internal space for the kind of attention we have been talking about this whole time. And that is why it connects to this message. Because God has been knocking, but some of you have been trying to hear through static. You have been trying to discern while your mind is exhausted. You have been trying to pray while your thoughts scatter. You have been trying to respond while your inner world is constantly interrupted. And if something can help support your ability to enter a clearer, more focused state, then for the right person, it may become a useful tool. Not the savior, a tool. Not the source, a support. Not the answer to everything, a way to help create space for attention. There is a story that fits this. A woman who had gone through meditation, spiritual retreats, and many practices still felt like something in her was not connecting the way she hoped. She was not looking for another complicated routine. She was tired of trying things that required so much effort while her mind already felt exhausted. After using the 7-minute audio consistently, she described the change in a simple way. She said it felt like synchronicities began returning, not as something forced, not as something she could control, but as if her mind became quiet enough to notice what she had been missing, and whether your experience would look like hers or not. The deeper principle is what matters. Sometimes, clarity is not only about receiving more signs. Sometimes, clarity is about becoming less scattered, so you can recognize the signs already present. That is the bridge. And I know some of you may be skeptical. Honestly, I respect that. You may be thinking, I have tried enough things already. I have tried meditation. I have tried healing sounds. I have tried routines. I have tried advice. And nothing really changed. That is why I am not presenting this as just another vague spiritual practice. The Genius Song is built around the idea of brain entrainment. Instead of asking you to force your mind into stillness for months, it uses a 7-minute audio process designed to guide the brain toward a clearer frequency state. The creator presents it as a simple daily ritual. Headphones, 7 minutes. No complicated mantra, no long routine, no expensive equipment. And compared with traditional biofeedback therapy or home devices that can cost hundreds or even thousands of dollars, this is positioned as a much more accessible option. The original price is $49. For viewers here, it is available for $39. And with that, you also receive the digital audio and the listed bonuses, including the children's focus audio, a classic book bonus, a guided visualization, and an infographic of daily habits. There is also a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you explore it and feel it is not for you, you are not locked in without recourse. I am sharing this softly because the right tool should never feel like pressure. It should feel like an invitation. If your spirit feels no pull toward it, let this part pass and keep receiving the message. But if something in you says, I need help clearing the static, I need help rebuilding focus, I need a simple daily support that matches this season of restored attention, then I left the link in the description and pinned comment. Use only that link if you choose to explore it. There are many fake versions and copies floating around online, and those do not carry the same track, bonuses, or guarantee. Do not search randomly and trust whatever appears first. If you feel led, use the link in the description and pinned comment so you know you are looking at the correct version. And then come right back to the deeper truth. Because the tool is not the point. The point is attention. The point is response. The point is that God has been knocking, and this time you are not going to let static, distraction, fear, guilt, or exhaustion steal the moment. This is the 5th knock. And now we return to the door. Imagine it inwardly. No physical movement, no pressure. Just see it in your spirit. There is a door inside you. For a long time, it has been there. Behind that door is not chaos, not punishment, not a version of God waiting to shame you. Behind that door is clarity. Behind that door is the part of you that stopped running. Behind that door is the yes you kept postponing. Behind that door is the peace that does not require pretending. Behind that door is the honest life. Behind that door is the version of you who can finally hear and respond. Now see the first knock behind you. Silence. The quiet season you almost called nothing. See it now as mercy. Then see the second knock. Discomfort. The holy friction you almost called stress. See it now as discernment. Then see the third knock. Delay. The waiting you almost called rejection. See it now as preparation. Then see the fourth knock. Exhaustion. The tiredness you almost called failure. See it now as release. And now, hear the fifth knock. Not outside you. Inside the place where your spirit still knows the truth. This knock does not ask you to panic. It asks you to answer. It does not ask you to understand everything. It asks you to become present. It does not ask you to fix your whole life tonight. It asks you to stop walking away from the next clean act of obedience. So inwardly, without forcing emotion, let your spirit answer. Here I am. Not perfect. Here I am. Not fully ready. Here I am. Not without fear. Here I am. Not with every answer. Here I am. Not running this time. Here I am. And as that answer rises, let the door open in your mind. Not violently, gently, as if the Father has been on the other side, not with anger, but with patience. And hear this over your life. You are not condemned for the knocks you missed. You are being awakened by the knock you finally recognized. You are not disqualified because you delayed your response. You are being invited to respond now. You are not too late for the work God is doing in you. You are not too broken to hear again. You are not too scattered to be gathered. You are not too tired to be restored. You are not too wounded to become clear. You are not too far gone to answer. The fifth knock is mercy, and mercy is here. Now let this become practical. When this message ends, do not rush immediately back into noise if you can avoid it. If you are driving, keep your attention safely where it belongs, but let the truth stay quietly with you. If you are lying down, let the words settle without forcing an emotional reaction. If you are busy, carry one sentence with you. Not this time. Not as fear. As agreement. Not this time will I ignore the silence. Not this time will I dismiss the discomfort. Not this time will I call preparation rejection. Not this time will I carry the false burden. Not this time will I walk away from the moment God is using to wake me up. Not this time will I let distraction steal the fifth knock. And if that is your witness, you can place it below. I hear the fifth knock. Short, simple, clean. I hear the fifth knock, not to impress anyone, not to perform spirituality, but to mark the moment your spirit stopped pretending it did not recognize the sound. Because some declarations are not for the crowd. They are for the part of you that needs to know you made agreement with truth. I hear the fifth knock. Let that be a line between the old pattern and the new response. And now I want to speak identity over you. Because the fifth knock does not only call you to act, it reminds you who you are. Chosen one, you are a seer. Not because you know everything, but because you notice what others dismiss. You sense patterns. You feel shifts. You recognize when something is no longer aligned. Do not let the world shame the sensitivity God gave you. Let it be purified. Let it be grounded. Let it be governed by wisdom. But do not bury it. Chosen one, you are a cycle breaker. Not because you hate where you came from, but because you are willing to stop repeating what wounded everyone before you. You are allowed to interrupt the inheritance of fear. You are allowed to end the pattern of silence. You are allowed to stop passing down exhaustion as normal. You are allowed to become the place where the old agreement loses power. Chosen one, you are a voice. Not always loud, not always public, but you carry language for things other people feel and cannot name. That is why your life has been through so many layers. Pain gave you depth. Waiting gave you language. Discomfort gave you discernment. Exhaustion gave you honesty. And now God is restoring your voice, not so you can perform, but so you can speak from truth. Chosen one, You are a wounded healer, not because your wound defines you, but because what God heals in you becomes medicine through you. You do not have to heal everyone while bleeding. You do not have to rush to help while your own heart is still collapsed. Let God restore you. Let God tend to the place you kept ignoring. Let God teach you how to serve from overflow. Your pain is not your identity, but surrendered pain can become purpose. Chosen one, you are a spiritual warrior, not because you are always fighting loudly, but because you have survived battles no one saw and still have a part of you that wants God. You have been tired, but not erased, delayed, but not denied, uncomfortable, but not abandoned, silent, but not forgotten, exhausted, but not finished. And now you are learning that the deepest battles are not always won by striving. Some are won by attention. Some are won by surrender. Some are won by refusing to run from truth. Some are won by saying, "Here I am," when everything in the old pattern says, "Leave." That is who you are becoming. Not the scattered one, the gathered one, not the rejected one, the prepared one, not the burdened one, the released one, not the almost one, the answering one, the one who finally heard the knock and stayed. Now, let this prayer rise over you. Father, meet the one listening right now in the exact place where they have been almost walking away. Meet them in the silence they avoided. Meet them in the discomfort they dismissed. Meet them in the delay they misunderstood. Meet them in the exhaustion they were ashamed to admit. And meet them now at the fifth knock. Do not let shame interpret this moment. Let grace interpret it. Do not let fear turn this into pressure. Let love turn it into response. Do not let distraction steal what you are restoring. Gather their attention. Gather their peace. Gather their discernment. Gather the scattered places inside them that have been living in survival. Teach them to hear without panic. Teach them to respond without performance. Teach them to wait without bitterness. Teach them to set boundaries without hatred. Teach them to release burdens without guilt. Teach them to obey with clean hands and a steady spirit. Where they have called silence abandonment, show them invitation. Where they have called discomfort instability, show them discernment. Where they have called delay rejection, show them preparation. Where they have called exhaustion failure, show them release. And where they have almost walked away again, let them hear you say, "Not this time." Not this time will fear lead them away from healing. Not this time will shame convince them they missed everything. Not this time will noise drown out the whisper. Not this time will old guilt control their obedience. Not this time will false burdens steal their strength. Not this time will they call the knock random. Let this be a moment of holy recognition. Let this be a turning. Let this be the place where their spirit says, "Here I am." And Father, give them one clean next step, not 10 confusing steps, not a burden too heavy to carry. One clean next step, a word to pray, a boundary to honor, a burden to release, a silence to protect, a decision to stop delaying, a truth to admit, a pattern to interrupt, a yes that is clean, a no that is holy, a response that matches the knock. Cover them with peace as they move. Cover them with wisdom as they discern. Cover them with courage as they obey. And remind them that your mercy did not end with the first missed knock. You came again. You came through silence. You came through discomfort. You came through delay. You came through exhaustion. And now you have come through recognition. Let them not leave this moment the same way they entered it. Let them leave more present, more honest, more grounded, more awake, more available to you, and more free from the old pattern that kept making them run. Amen. Chosen one. This is the moment to carry the message carefully. Do not turn it into fear. Turn it into attention. Do not turn it into pressure. Turn it into response. Do not turn it into another emotional high that disappears by tomorrow. Turn it into one clean act of obedience. Because the fifth knock is not complete because you heard it. It becomes complete when you answer. And answering does not have to look dramatic. It may look like sitting in quiet for a few moments before returning to noise. It may look like choosing not to reopen a draining conversation. It may look like telling God the truth about what you have been avoiding. It may look like refusing to call the delay rejection one more day. It may look like releasing one false burden from your hands. It may look like using the tool if you feel led, or simply choosing to guard your attention with more seriousness. It may look like commenting, "I hear the fifth knock," as a witness that something in you recognized this moment. But whatever it looks like, let it be clean. Let it be honest. Let it be yours before God. Because this is not about proving something to people. This is about no longer betraying the place where God is meeting you. And before you go, hear this one more time. The 4 knocks were not proof that you failed. They were proof that God kept reaching. The silence was not emptiness. It was mercy. The discomfort was not instability. It was discernment. The delay was not rejection. It was preparation. The exhaustion was not failure. It was release. And the 5th knock is not random. It is recognition. It is the moment where God says, "Now you see it. Now you know. Now, do not run." Chosen one, you did not stay by accident. You stayed because something in you still knows the sound of His voice, and that matters. The part of you that stayed is the part God is strengthening. The part of you that recognized the pattern is the part God is awakening. The part of you that whispered, "Here I am," is the part that will walk differently from this moment forward. Maybe not perfectly, but differently. And sometimes differently is the miracle that begins everything. So carry this quietly. Guard it. Do not let the noise steal it immediately. Do not let the old pattern mock it. Do not let doubt rush in and explain it away. Do not let shame say you are too late. Do not let exhaustion say you cannot respond. Do not let comparison say it happens for everyone else. Do not let fear say leave before this asks anything of you. Stay present. Stay honest. Stay soft before God. Stay willing. Because the 5th knock has sounded. And this time you heard it. This time you stayed. This time you saw the pattern. This time you know it was not random. This time grace reached you in the place where avoidance used to win. And this time the answer rising from your spirit is simple. Here I am. Not running. Not pretending. Not calling it nothing. Here I am. And God, in His mercy, is saying over you, not this time. This time you are coming back. This time you are hearing clearly. This time you are releasing the false burden. This time you are guarding your attention. This time you are answering the knock. And this time you are not walking away